GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Another day of sunshine and showers to come today, though the sunshine is going to be fairly limited, unfortunately, and so it's going to feel quite cool again for the time of year. We've got a brisk northerly wind that will be pushing through those showers. Some of these could be fairly slow moving across more southern areas. They bring a risk of hail, lightning as well as thunder, so do take care if you're travelling. They may bring quite a lot of rain in a short space of time. So with that northerly wind, it will feel much colder than these temperatures suggest, for many of us feeling much more like single figures, which is a little bit below par for the time of year. And that chilly theme will continue through the rest of this week, though this evening the showers will tend to slowly die away and the winds will ease. But still, we can expect some quite frequent showers around rush hour across parts of Scotland, all the way down towards northern England as well. Northern Ireland starting to see that drier weather moving in, so perhaps a brighter start to end to the day for these areas. Still some sunshine here and there. You can see some gaps between the showers, but the brighter colours show that they could be quite heavy if you do get caught in one. Those showers do tend to die away into the evening, though, with clearer skies developing quite widely, particularly across western areas. It's the northwest that will be the chilliest overnight tonight. Meanwhile, across the east, we've got an area of low pressure bringing more in the way of rain and cloud to eastern coast. So slightly milder here, quite a lot of cloud around, but still a cold northerly wind coming down the North Sea here. So for Friday, I think for most of us it's going to be a drier day with high pressure coming in just for a time. So that means fewer showers, not entirely dry. You can see there's still a few showers here and there, particularly across the south coast later in the day. And across the east, it will still feel chilly with that northerly wind persisting into the afternoon. So temperatures here closer to 10 or 11 degrees. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
£76,543 and 21 pence in tax-free cash could be yours this summer. That's totally tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. And remember, because it's totally tax-free cash, you'll get to keep every single penny. For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain,
with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think GB News is completely unique in the way that we interact with our viewers.
Our audience aren't afraid to have their say. They want their voices heard now, and they've got a channel where that can happen.
I find more and more as I'm wandering around, people come up to me and they say, "We saw you on television." I say, "Oh yes, on what?" "On GB News." "Hello, are you the famous Sue?"
The whole crew hit me here now. We came to celebrate.
It's our job to be the eyes and ears of the viewers.
They are part of the GB News family, and I'm pleased to say it's a very large family.
And if people go to the time and trouble of listening and watching, then we've got to do a good job for them.
Well, I'm here right in the epicentre of the protest.
Here we go again.
You just tuned in. Where have you been?
It is raucous here tonight.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 14th of May. I'm Charlie Peters.
And I'm Dawn Neeson.
But then I suppose the Health Secretary has been a bit distracted lately, hasn't he? Yeah, hasn't he? Yeah. He's chuntering now. Why don't you just do your job? Do your job. Speech. There's no point in giving me dirty looks. We all know what he's been up to.
It's all side eyes on Wes Streeting today as the Health Secretary is set to resign and launch a Labour leadership challenge to the Prime Minister. Or is he? But as Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch put it, shouldn't he just get on with his job?
Well, the Prime Minister is said to still have full confidence in his Health Secretary. Wes Streeting still hasn't launched a leadership bid yet. What's taking him so long? I'm here in his constituency, finding out what his constituents think.
For me, that was the most distressing thing, is that people felt that I was tax dodging or trying to set up trusts to avoid tax, or being careless by not taking the appropriate advice.
But while we are waiting for Wes, there's been a green light for Rayner, because Angela Rayner, she's been cleared by HMRC over her tax affairs, paving the way for an attempt at the top job.
Meanwhile, Red Ed recharged Energy Secretary Ed Miliband powers up for a leadership showdown, poised to throw his hat in the ring as well.
But what's taking them all so long? Well, none of these putative candidates want to be the first one over the top. Reportedly, more cabinet ministers are due to see the Prime Minister this afternoon to try and encourage him to resign, or at least set out a timetable for departure that could kick everything off.
And while all those potential candidates are still in the trenches, there's good news for the economy. It's grown for the first 3 months of the year as the Chancellor tells her colleagues do not put Britain's stability at risk.
And the big story looming this weekend is two-tier policing in full force. The Met Police confirm facial recognition technology will be used at the Tommy Robinson Unite the Kingdom rally over the weekend, promoting claims of two-tier policing, as it won't be used at a pro-Palestine march. So welcome to the show this afternoon. Thank you so much for your company. We are obviously on the drama watch, waiting to see what happens. As soon as anything does happen, we will bring you all the latest breaking news on it. However, I'm sure the cat is getting very confused now about what the hell's going on, as are we.
Yes, it's a snail-led coup, it seems. They're making their way very gradually towards the point of no return, but very gradually indeed.
Just get on with it is the message, I think, Kemi Badenoch said when she was talking about Wes Streeting doing his job. He is Health Secretary, by the way. Currently, who knows? It could all change in the next half an hour.
Absolutely.
We will get. But the other big story Charlie and I wanted to talk about is what's happening at the weekend, Charlie. There are two big marches going on in London. One, Unite the Kingdom, organised by Tommy Robinson, and the other, pro-Palestine march. We see them every weekend. Big marches. And there is also the FA Cup Cup final. Now, the only one of those three things where facial recognition technology will be used is, yeah, you guessed it, the United Kingdom march. Now, why is that, Charlie?
It's a very good question. Well, the Met Police, they say they're going to be surging resources and money towards dealing with all of the rallies and protests taking place this weekend. But they haven't quite explained why only one of those two protests or rallies or marches is going to get that facial recognition technology. I have to say, it seems a bit of an open goal that they've created for their critics, just to say that they're only going to use it in one such march, particularly when they are under so much criticism, the Met, for their, say, rather lax policing of these protests in the past, particularly when we've seen people wearing Hamas headbands or chanting, you know, things that they're now dealing as criminal. It seems a very curious decision indeed.
It is, and there was only, I've only ever seen a swastika on one of those kind of marches, and guess which one that was as well?
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
It wasn't the United Kingdom one. Anyway, so let us know what you think. GBNews.com/your say, or scan the QR code. Join in that conversation. Join in talking about the political drama if you really, really want to. We'll read as many out as we possibly can. All of that coming up after the news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you very much and good afternoon. The top stories. Sir Keir Starmer continues to insist he will fight on, Downing Street says, amid threats of a leadership challenge, adding the Prime Minister retains confidence in Wes Streeting as Health Secretary, and the position hasn't changed since Wednesday. It comes, though, as Mr Streeting was expected to resign this morning in a bid to oust Sir Keir Starmer. Starmer has warned ministers that any leadership challenge would plunge the party into chaos. It follows a crunch meeting yesterday lasting less than 20 minutes between Mr Streeting and Starmer, just hours before the King's speech. MPs met in the Commons soon after, where the Tory leader mocked the Health Secretary about his leadership ambitions, asking, why don't you just do your job? Chief Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, spoke to GB News.
Well, look, there's no shortage of speculation in the media, and the Prime Minister said himself on Monday if there were a leadership election, he would stand in that leadership election and win and continue as Prime Minister. But I think what's important for me is to emphasise that I think having a leadership election would be the wrong choice for us to take. I think that we should be focusing on the challenges people are facing. I think we have a responsibility as a government to focus on what people are experiencing rather than to look inward and to focus on our own issues as a party. And I think that's a responsibility we have to the people of this country.
Meanwhile, Angela Rayner, seen as a potential challenger to the Prime Minister, says she has been cleared by HMRC of wrongdoing over her tax affairs. The former Deputy Prime Minister says she settled the £40,000 unpaid bill for a flat near Brighton. She stood down as Deputy Prime Minister in September last year after admitting she underpaid stamp duty on her £800,000 flat in Hove. At the time, the Prime Minister's ethics advisor said Rayner acted with integrity but had breached the ministerial code. Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride spoke to GB News Breakfast.
I think probably good news for Angela Rayner, but I think most people will still be curious as to how somebody who was formerly the Housing Secretary managed to end up in a position where she failed to pay £40,000 worth of tax on a property purchase.
Angela Rayner has responded this morning saying, I welcome HMRC's conclusion, which has cleared me of any wrongdoing. I've been exonerated by HMRC of the accusation that I deliberately sought to avoid tax. I set out to pay the correct amount of tax. I took reasonable care and acted in good faith based on the expert advice I received, and HMRC has accepted this. Meanwhile, the UK economy grew by 0.6% between January and March, according to the Office for National Statistics. This was higher than the 0.5% growth that most economists had been expecting, and marks the highest since the first quarter of 2025. The ONS also saying GDP increased by 0.3% in March, surprising economists who'd been expecting growth to slow following the onset of the war in the Middle East. Sussex police believe they have identified 3 women who died in the sea off Brighton on Wednesday morning following extensive inquiries. Emergency services were called after concerns were raised for the women's welfare at around 5:45 a.m. yesterday, and their bodies were pulled from the water near to Madeira Drive. Police have said it would not be appropriate to publicly name the women before procedures are completed. The women were about 20 to 30 years old, and police are saying there was no evidence to suggest third-party involvement or criminality. Finally, Donald Trump says he and Xi Jinping had productive conversations earlier today with a cherished opportunity to discuss many things. That's as Xi says the China-US relationship is the world's most important as he hosted Mr. Trump at a state banquet today. President Trump said the relationship between the superpowers will be better than ever before.
The relationship between the American and Chinese people goes all the way back to America's founding. The first American consul to China, Samuel Shaw, arrived on the first American trading ship to reach these shores in 1784. The Chinese merchants had a name for the Americans. They called their visions the New People. 2.5 centuries later, that first connection has grown into one of the most consequential relationships in world history.
Those are the latest headlines for now. Here's a look at the finance.
Taking the ups and downs in our stride. Stilts Home Lifts sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
The pound will buy you $1.35 and 1.15 euros. The price of gold, £3,474, and the FTSE 100 is currently at 10,345 points.
GB News Finance Report, brought to you by Stilts Home Lifts.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain. Plenty to get stuck into today, all this swirling political drama. Before we get started, we're going to have a quick chat about the latest we're hearing from many of you. Getting in touch, gbnews.com/your say.
Yeah, indeed. Lots of you are getting in touch about the Unite the Kingdom march at the weekend, which is going on, and the fact that the police are introducing facial recognition for it and also armoured vehicles. There is also a pro-Palestine march going on. Well, there wouldn't be, and none of those things are applying to that. So a lot of you are getting in touch about this one. Lucy has got in touch. It sounds like you go on these marches, Lucy. Lucy says, this is a clear attempt to make one rally look like far-right thugs, in inverted commas, facial recognition, armoured vehicles for a family event with children. They should be ashamed of themselves. They're trying to provoke violence for some photos. Meanwhile, Gary says, face recognition not being used for the Palestine marchers because they want to cause trouble and shout obscenities, and they always have their faces covered. Very good point.
It's a key point, isn't it? The face coverings has been a long-running issue for the police and, frankly, for us. I mean, I find it quite uncomfortable when I see protests and people are sort of hiding within the crowd with their faces covered. It instantly brings a sense of menace, I think, if you go into a public space with your face covered. And I think also I've seen quite a few young lads wearing, like, the coronavirus masks. I think because it was normalised in that period, a lot of people now have this sense that, well, I can just wear this out and about and no one will challenge me for doing it. But often they're not wearing it because they're concerned about health. They're wearing it because they think it will protect them from the law. Yeah, indeed. We will bring you more on that story throughout the show, so please don't go anywhere. We have got lots to get through, though. Obviously, with all the Starmer drama, as I'm calling it, it is all eyes, side eyes, if you're Kemi, on Wes Streeting as the Health Secretary. He's reportedly planning to resign and launch a leadership challenge against the Prime Minister today, at some point. Yes, the Health Secretary has allegedly amassed the 81 Labour MPs needed to trigger a formal contest, with Angela Rayner and Ed Miliband touted as potential leadership contenders. Also, Al Khan's, the Defence Minister, also apparently looking to go forward. Only got into Parliament in 2024. Bit of a dark horse, that one. The Labour Party on the brink of civil war, though. Sir Keir Starmer warned ministers and MPs yesterday that a leadership contest could plunge the party into chaos. It's already in chaos amid a disastrous set of local election results. Well, our national reporter Will Godley joins us now from Wes Streeting's constituency, where he's been speaking to Streeting's constituents. Will Godley, what can you tell us about the mood on the streets in Ilford?
Well, good afternoon to both of you. I can tell you that the weather is just as unpredictable as any leadership challenge. It's been raining incredibly hard. It's just stopped, I think, now. So perhaps I can put the brolly down. Don't know if I want to take the risk. And perhaps it's Wes Streeting who doesn't want to take the risk firing the starting pistol in all of this and putting his hat into the rink just yet. Sources in his camp seeming to suggest that they think the Prime Minister might announce his timetable for a departure as soon as this afternoon. Of course, the Prime Minister has always said he's not going to resign, and Wes Streeting's allies adamant he has the numbers. But does he? Well, if he did, perhaps he would have already announced this leadership bid here. But here in Ilford North, this has been Wes Streeting's constituency since 2015. And in the last election, that general election which Labour saw that huge landslide, Wes Streeting didn't quite have the same luck. His majority here wafer thin, only 528 seats. In fact, some people I've been speaking to even wondering whether Wes Streeting would be re-elected if he was to stand here in any future general elections. But it's not a general election he might want to stand in. It's a Labour leadership election, of course voted for by Labour MPs. Wes Streeting would need 81 to support him in order to launch this challenge. But what do his constituents here think about him doing that, and do they think he would be a good Prime Minister? Well, I've been finding out this afternoon.
I do think he would make a good Prime Minister, but I'm just think he's been a little bit backhanded because he said he wasn't interested in the job previously.
To be honest with you, I think he's the least bad option.
I don't think he's got the experience. And, you know, what makes him think that he's better than Keir Starmer?
I don't think he'd do it properly. I don't think he'd listen to the people of this country.
Well, I would like the current Prime Minister to be on the job, because I don't want a general election now, and I don't want any other person, really.
I think if Keir Starmer was disastrous, it's difficult to go beyond disastrous as far as bad is concerned. But I think when you look that up in the dictionary, it's got Wes Streeting by the name.
Well, some of the views of Wes Streeting's constituents there about whether he would make a good Prime Minister. In order, though, for him to even get there, he would have to trigger a leadership contest. That's not happened yet, so this is all at this stage hypothetical. And the Prime Minister, just in the last few minutes, has said that he still has full confidence in Wes Streeting as Health Secretary. Will we see him firing a starting pistol this afternoon? We'll have to wait and see.
Thank you very much, Will Godley. I have to say, Dawn, I think that one of the reasons why the Prime Minister is saying he has full confidence in Wes Streeting, because he also has full confidence that he's not going to run, because Wes Streeting probably realises he hasn't got enough support. He'd lose that contest. He doesn't want to be the first to go.
It does, mate. And this is the Prime Minister also had full confidence in Peter Mandelson, wasn't it?
Lots of full confidences.
Yes, it's a bit like the manager of a football club, isn't it? The board are giving you full confidence, full backing. You're out the door the next day.
Well, we're Tottenham and West Ham, so we've seen enough.
I know,
of
we're just not talking. Oh my God, I mentioned football. So yeah, well, you can talk about football if you want. We don't mind at all. But it is quite. That's my old manor as well, Ilford.
Is it?
You went to school there. And yeah, it doesn't look any better in the rain. It has to be said. Interesting to hear what people are saying there. OK, now Angela Rayner has said she has been cleared of tax misconduct by HMRC, paving the way for a potential leadership from her.
The former Deputy Prime Minister has settled £40,000 in stamp duty arrears after an investigation found she'd underpaid on her flat in Hove.
And with Sir Keir Starmer's premiership hanging in the balance, could we see Rayner return to frontline politics?
Well, joining us now is the former Cabinet Office Chief Economist, Jonathan Portes. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us. What's your perspective then on the timing, first and foremost, on Angela Rayner having this green light moment from HMRC? It does seem rather curious that this information is coming to us now.
It's quite a coincidence, but I would say that HMRC has incredibly strict rules to prevent even the possible appearance of any political interference whatsoever. You know, when HMRC was set up several hundred years ago, that was one of the, Parliament made it very, very clear that although HMRC reports to the Treasury ministers can't in any way be involved with decisions in relating to the investigation of individuals, precisely because of this sort of situation. So I have every confidence that this is she's chosen to make it public today, and maybe she knew about this before and she was waiting to announce it. But I'm absolutely sure that HMRC made this decision entirely divorced from any political consideration at all.
Jonathan, the whispers from Westminster are that Angela has known about this for quite some time, indeed potentially as far back as February. As you said, it was her choice to announce it today. How do you interpret that?
That indeed is if it was her choice, then I think the political motivation for choosing to announce it now is pretty obvious. She clearly intends to be in some form involved in any potential contest. Not surprisingly, as somebody who was until this matter came up, the Deputy Prime Minister. It's not clear in what form she'll be involved or whatsoever, but she clearly wants to be a big player, either as a contender or as a kingmaker or queenmaker, I guess.
Jonathan, lots of people are struggling at the moment. We heard the economy made a little bit of a sort of like an upturn this morning, but lots of people are struggling still. Do you think many people will be able to forgive Angela Rayner for this tax issue? I mean, she's been she's been found not guilty of doing anything wrong, but it does stick in people's throats a little bit.
I'm not sure. As I understand it, there are various things that HMRC could have found. She could have found that she could have deliberately made underpaid, which would have been disastrous for her, obviously. Could have found that she failed to take reasonable care, that is to say she was careless, which would have reflected badly but not been terminal. And it could have found that actually she did the right thing and there was just an error that was not her fault. And as I understand it, it's actually the last of those which they concluded. In other words, she did take care, or she took reasonable care, but something went wrong. And in that case, it doesn't seem to me that any normal person would regard that as a problem. I have to say that, given Nigel Farage accepted £5 million from a dodgy crypto billionaire in Thailand, £5 million, and we have no idea what that was for. I would have thought that ordinary people would regard that, and that, of course, Nigel Farage has been touting crypto to his followers. I would have thought that would be for most people, that would be a much, much bigger political issue, you would think, wouldn't you?
But he's not in the running to be Prime Minister at the moment, is he? Jonathan, just quickly, and finally, you're used to dealing with money and economists. Who's your money on to be the next Labour leader?
My money is staying safely in my pocket because, for the reasons that I think you've just explained very well, we really have no idea what's going on.
Okay. Jonathan Bottas,
I certainly don't.
Former Cabinet Office Chief Economist, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. One of the problems that anyone like Angela Rayner will have, though, Dawn, if they do challenge for the leadership, is that there is no mandate for a vision to the left of Keir Starmer. They'll very quickly come into office and find out there is even less money than they expected, and they will be more hated than any politician in this century, I think. I mean, just the idea of having a more left-wing vision of this Labour government, it would be so despised.
No mandate. That's not what people voted for, is it? And if the shoe was on the other foot, and when they're in opposition, they called for people to resign. They called for a general election. So will the Tories be calling for a general election if and when it happens?
They definitely will be. Right, it's time for the Great British Giveaway. It's your chance to enjoy a sensational summer on us. How much is in the offer here, Dawn?
It is £76,543.21 in tax-free cash. For now, you can spend it on anything you want in the coming months. And here's all the details to make it yours.
Are you dreaming of a ton of tax-free cash this summer? We want to make that dream come true with a stunning £76,543.21 in cash to spend however you like. That is extra cash that you could use to buy those treats you've always wanted, put a new car on the drive, or just relax in the knowledge that this year we've got your back. £76,543.21 is an incredible amount of money, and it could be all yours. For a chance to win £76,543.21 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's lots more coming up on today's show as we continue our coverage of the slowest political coup in human history.
And it's all side eyes on Wes Streeting. When or if or even will he go? Will he resign? This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far. We'll see you very soon.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong Tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 27 minutes past 12 and the Met Police have confirmed facial recognition technology will be used at the Tommy Robinson Unite the Kingdom rally over the weekend.
Now, this has prompted claims of two-tier policing, as that technology won't be used at a pro-Palestine march on the same day.
So let's talk to the expert on this at GB News Home Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, this does sound a little bit like two-tier policing.
Yeah, listen, I think the optics of it don't look good at all for the Met. Now, they say specifically there is a reason that they are deploying live facial recognition, and that's because of intelligence they say they have that some of the individuals at the Unite the Kingdom march are potentially going to cause issues and problems. And they're also looking for individuals with regard to a march that took place in September of last year, in which the Metropolitan Police say there was significant violence. There are still 50 outstanding suspects. As we look at these images of one of the facial recognition vans, it's worth bringing you a statement. This was yesterday. It was a briefing that we were given from Deputy Assistant Commissioner James Hardman about this operation. And remember, there's 2 marches that are taking place. There's the Unite the Kingdom, expected to be very well attended. Hundreds of thousands, of course, attended the last march. And this time around, well, the police are estimating potentially 50,000, but they acknowledge it could be significantly more. It will be significant.
It will be, absolutely.
We absolutely know that's the case. There's also the pro-Palestinian march to commemorate Nakba Day, the day of the great disaster, according to the Palestinians, when they were removed from their homes by the administration at that time in that area. But this statement from DAC Harman says, with regard to live facial recognition, will be deployed in the London borough of Camden, in an area likely to be used by those attending the Unite the Kingdom event. The event is expected to attract significant numbers, and we have intelligence which indicates that there is likely to be a threat to public safety from some who might be in attendance. Live facial recognition won't be deployed, he says, within the assembly or rally points of either protest, or indeed on the route itself. So it's just in this one specific area around Camden. And as I say, according to the Met, there's some 50 people that are still wanted in connection with the last Unite the Kingdom rally. So presumably they're looking for those suspects. Having said it's going to be in the Camden area, you would imagine that it might be quite simple for people to avoid that specific area.
Well, perhaps that's a train station, Mark. It could be a terminus.
I would imagine it probably takes into account Euston, King's Cross and those areas. But listen, in terms of the marches themselves, it comes against the backdrop, of course, of also the FA Cup final.
Yeah, of course.
Chelsea-Man City. Big game in itself, big policing issue. These 2 protests with hundreds of thousands who are going to be attending both the protests will be a huge challenge. It's going to be 4,000 police officers. They are, for the first time, also going to be using armoured vehicles.
The sandcats.
Sandcats, that they're called. First time they are going to be used for a protest. So there's some, I'm sure, attending these marches that might think that this is being talked up in terms of the threat that it poses to the police. The police will say, well, look, previous events have thrown up significant of disorder and violence. And they say they're taking a zero tolerance approach this time around.
And Mark, thank you so much. Well, the last time we covered it live on this show, or on the weekend show that I do, most of the people at that march were families. There were lots of kids there, lots of pensioners there.
Well, Tony Robinson has said that he's put out a statement on X saying, please stay peaceful, stay disciplined, do not give the media or the establishment what they want, no aggression, no masks, no excuses. So he's also issuing a message towards those who will attend. And, the Met, obviously, they recognise that it's a rally, that incidents did happen in September. Tony Robinson's saying families, women and children will be there. So he says no excuses for those who turn up on cause trouble.
No, exactly, and that's exactly what it looked like last time. In any case, we will move on. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Up next, Wes Streeting. He's struggling to get the number of MPs to get over the line, and Burnham's also struggling to find an MP willing to give up their seat. Al Khan's struggling also to launch his leadership contest. Angela Rayner no longer struggling with HMRC. Everyone's struggling. Is Labour in complete turmoil?
Good afternoon. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer continues to insist he will fight on, Downing Street says, amid threats of a leadership challenge. It comes as the Health Secretary Wes Streeting was expected to resign this morning in a bid to oust the Prime Minister. While the move could spark a leadership contest if Mr Streeting successfully manages to get 81 Labour MPs to back him. Angela Rayner, seen as a potential challenger to the Prime Minister, says she has been cleared by HMRC of wrongdoing over her tax affairs in an interview published today. She stood down as the Deputy Prime Minister last year after admitting she underpaid stamp duty on her £800,000 flat in Hove. Donald Trump says he and Xi Jinping had productive conversations earlier today with a cherished opportunity to discuss many things. President Trump said the relationship between the superpowers will be better than ever before. Xi says the China-US relationship is the world's most important as he hosted Mr. Trump at a state banquet. And Sussex police believe they have identified 3 women who died in the sea off Brighton on Wednesday morning, adding investigators have a number of hypotheses about how they died. Emergency services were called after concerns were raised for the women's welfare around 5:45 a.m. yesterday. Their bodies were pulled from the water near to Madeira Drive. Those are the latest headlines. For now, there's more news from me at the top of the hour.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. And in many respects, today's looking quite similar to yesterday weather-wise. Lots of showers, some brisk winds and a cool feel to things as well. All because low pressure is currently sitting over Scandinavia and that's dragging this brisk northerly flow across us. And it's in that northerly flow where we have plenty of showers piling their way down. They're going to become increasingly widespread through the afternoon and they will turn heavy and thundery at times like we saw yesterday, even with a bit of hail mixed in. Quite large hail as well. We're talking maybe a centimetre in diameter. Yes, there will be some bright sunny spells, but these will be quite limited. And as I mentioned, a cool feel to things with temperatures a little bit below average for the time of year and feeling even cooler in those strong winds. So as we go through the evening, we are going to continue with the showery theme across parts of Scotland. Maybe the odd wintry shower over the higher ground. Still some heavy, still some thundery ones to watch out for as well. Perhaps slightly drier over Northern Ireland, but I wouldn't rule out a few showers developing at times, and then a showery theme through the end of the day across the bulk of England and Wales as well. Still some heavy ones to watch out for. As we go overnight, however, some of the showers will start to ease. They aren't going to ease entirely, so it is still going to be a bit showery in places, particularly in areas exposed to that northerly wind, so northern parts of Scotland and then down the western and eastern coast as well. More inland areas turning largely dry, and there will be some clear breaks, and under those clear spells, particularly in shelter from those brisk winds, could turn a little chilly in some places. Then as we go through tomorrow, well, a drier day, not totally dry, still some showers in those coastal spots, both the north, the east and the west, and a swathe of showery rain pushing across some southern parts, but other places having a drier theme with some decent sunshine and temperatures maybe just a degree or so up on today. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A82 near Urquhart Castle is restricted due to an incident. In Kirklees, M62 westbound between junctions 27 and 26 has a collision with one lane closed, causing delays. On the A50 in Staffordshire, westbound traffic between A518 at Uttoxeter East and Uttoxeter North is slow. In Surrey, A3 northbound between A247 and M25 is partly blocked due to a broken down vehicle. And on the trains, cross-country services between Southampton Central and Southampton Airport Parkway plus London Overground are disrupted around Denmark Hill. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12:37 and we're still waiting for Wes Streeting to launch a much-teased leadership challenge against the Prime Minister after reports that he was planning to resign today as Health Secretary. But what is taking him so long?
Well, that is the question. I mean, Does he not have enough people backing him? He's meant to have 81, but don't you think he would have thought that before he went to the Prime Minister yesterday and said, I'm sticking a knife in your back?
Well, let's cross down to Downing Street and join our deputy political editor, Tom Harwood. Tom, we're hearing from the papers that things are shifting and that his plans may be being ripped up and that he might not have enough support required for this resignation.
Well, there are competing briefings going on right now, Charlie. It seems that there are some people who are in favour of Wes Streeting and his potential challenge to Keir Starmer that are saying that he is waiting to see what happens with the rest of the Cabinet, that other Cabinet colleagues could go and see the Prime Minister today to tell him that the time is up, to tell the Prime Minister that he needs to set out a timetable for him to go, and that Wes Streeting does not want to preempt that. However, if you speak to people who are perhaps not so much in favour of a Wes Streeting premiership, they're more likely to say, look, he doesn't have the votes. People around him say that he does, but he doesn't. That's their argument. But clearly, what we're seeing right now is perhaps a Mexican standoff, or maybe like one of those memes with various Spider-Men all facing one another and no one moving. Why is that? Well, reportedly, Ed Miliband has explored the possibility of standing for the leadership. Angela Rayner, now clear of her HMRC tax difficulties, has a clear run at that post too. Al Khan's the junior defence minister, only an MP since 2024. He's reportedly been exploring the possibility. And of course, Andy Burnham struggling to find a seat too, but clearly on manoeuvres. So you've got these 5 names, all of them in a state of suspended animation, waiting and watching, waiting to see what might happen. I have to say, Charlie, while I've been standing on here on Downing Street through this morning, or perhaps just into this afternoon, I think it was about 12:05, Steve Reid, the Housing Secretary, came and walked down the street and into the black door behind me. Now, this is in the context of reportedly Cabinet Ministers going to see the Prime Minister today to tell him that the gig is up. But that would be strange from Steve Reid, given he's been such a vocal ally of the Prime Minister in the media. I have to say, I shouted at Steve Reid several questions. Do you support the Prime Minister? Have you come here to tell him that his time is up? I got no response from Steve Reid. Some other colleagues elsewhere in the media are reporting that the Prime Minister is due to go on a visit with Steve Reid to some housing developments today. That would be convenient if the Prime Minister wanted to get himself out of Downing Street and unavailable to be met by critical Cabinet Ministers. But I have to say, I've been trying to reach out to Steve Reid's people for the last hour or so, and I have not got confirmation of that visit myself. So it's hard to know exactly what's going on. But as I say, a seeming state of suspended animation, perhaps some sort of phony war that we're currently in. Shadow campaigns running behind the scenes clearly, but no one has gone over the top.
Tom, just explain quickly, if this does happen and the leadership battle is announced and it does happen, how long could it take? I mean, are we going to be in a zombie parliament state for, what, a couple of months or something?
How long is a piece of string, Dawn? Excellent. Now, when the Conservative Party decided to replace Liz Truss with Rishi Sunak, that was done in a space of 4 days. But when Boris Johnson resigned as Prime Minister, it was a space of 3 long months before a replacement was confirmed. Now, it's up to the Labour Party NEC, it's up to the ruling body of the Labour Party to set the terms for a leadership contest. They could say that it's a very, very short contest, or they could say it's a very, very long contest indeed. It could even be a coronation, as we saw in 2007 when Tony Blair resigned and Gordon Brown stood. No serious challenger stood against him, no one with enough nominations, and therefore he automatically became Prime Minister without a contest. An interesting note of that 2007 coronation of Gordon Brown is that a man called David Miliband, who was going to be the Foreign Secretary, he went to see Tony Blair in that sort of period just before the contest or the non-contest started, asking Tony Blair's advice in terms of whether he should stand. Now, of course, David Miliband never became Labour Party leader. He never became Prime Minister. He lost the next leadership election to his brother, Ed Miliband. Now, had he stood against Gordon Brown in 2007, well, there would have been a chance that he could have become Prime Minister. Maybe that is something that is weighing in the back of all the contenders' minds right now. Not just the risk of being the person to go first, the so-called curse of he who wields the knife never wears the crown. Perhaps more pertinently for some of these individuals to think about are those who never wield the knife at all, who never go for it at all. History is littered with far more names like Michael Portillo and David Miliband than names like Michael Heseltine.
Well, Tom, I think you very briefly mentioned there a Spider-Man meme, which I think we can show the audience very quickly to indicate what you're talking about. That is the state of the Labour Party right now. 3 contenders all pointing at each other. It could grow, Tom. It could grow. This is us, the Spider-Men.
I think there's
with
another
their
meme,
boxes.
Charlie, with 5 of them, which might be more accurate.
Sorry, we've only got the 3 on the screen right now, Tom, but we'll update it to 5 next time we speak to you. They're all pointing at each other. The Mexican standoff with the Spider-Men. That is the Labour leadership contest. That hasn't even started yet, really.
Tom, thank you so much. We'll be talking to you later in the show, and that was me giving Charlie the side eye, Kemi style. Did you notice that?
She's pretty good
I
at
did.
that.
When you were doing your Spider-Man thing, I was going...
And we're only 1 hour in. Lucky you.
Hey! OK, let's go and talk to political commentator Paul Connew now. Paul, it's on the front pages, we're talking about it ad nauseum, but nothing's happening. Why?
Well, my sources tell me that that Mr. Streeting is struggling to get the magical 81. They thought they had them last night, but last night there was a frenzied round of telephone calls from supporters of both the Prime Minister, and of Andy Burnham, and that some people they thought they had in the bag haven't materialised. They're still hoping to have enough by mid-afternoon, but I get the feeling that that confidence isn't particularly high.
That's interesting.
And the Prime Minister's team would seem more confident too, because today's economic figures, the 0.3 increase in March when everyone thought it was going to be bad news, and also 0.6% over the year, which makes us the highest growth level of the G7. So I think at the moment the Prime Minister is feeling slightly, if only slightly, more confident than he was a couple of days ago.
Paul, do you think Angela Rayner announcing this morning, curious timing, that she'd been cleared by HMRC and was therefore free to stand herself, has altered the number of backers that were maybe thinking of going for Wes?
I think that's possibly true, but as I understand it, Angela Rayner plans, or certainly planned until very recently, that she would support Andy Burnham. So certainly I think she would be somebody who won't be pressing for an early contest. And this is one of the factors here. The longer this is delayed, it works against Wes Streeting and arguably in favour of the Prime Minister, certainly in terms, of him at least having a stay of execution, if nothing else.
Paul, I just want to bring you what Jalan Ganesh has said from the Financial Times on that theme exactly, that this could help the Prime Minister. He has another argument, because if Sir Keir Starmer goes, Britain faces 3 years with an unelected Prime Minister enacting ideas to the left of the government's 2024 mandate, with unions and electoral reject Ed Miliband setting the course. It would take a Dante to put into words how hated these people are going to be. Now, we don't have Dante, we've got Paul Connew. But, Paul, what do you make of that perspective? Would they become more hated than, any other government in living memory?
That depends. If the economy improves, if the cost of living improves, and if, and this is the biggest if of all, if the Prime Minister can somehow discover the art of oratory and inspirational speaking, then that might not happen. At the moment, I've been arguing for a long time that he isn't the man to lead Labour into the next general election, although I've also argued it needs to be, a cohesive process, not a sort of mad, chaotic coup-type scramble. But I think that the jury's out on that. I mean,
All right.
Unfortunately, his lack of communication skill is probably his main Achilles heel. I mean...
OK, Paul, we've got to leave it there. I'm really sorry. Political commentator Paul Cornu, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Paul. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GBNews. There's lots more coming up on today's show.
Will Wes Streeting make his move? Could he back down? What on earth is going on behind that door? Many questions that we are going to be asking.
But if you want to escape all of that and maybe head for some holiday sun, I don't blame you. Here's a forecast for you.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, are you heading away over the next couple of days? Well, there's some very unsettled weather across Central Europe with thunderstorms and large hail, and that is pushing further south. But for the Canary Islands, it's relatively dry, some brighter spells into parts of Spain as well as Italy. That unsettled weather is pushing down from Central Europe through the rest of this week. It does look like it will get a little bit drier into next week and over the weekend, however, and temperatures will finally lift up a bit as well. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to stop. You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I got scammed over a period of about 18 months. I met the family. I actually met my scammer, met the family, friends. They were all part of the scam.
Did you get a sense, Lynn, that you were being scammed? And if you did, when did that happen?
Not until I went to the police. It took a long time. I think I was groomed over a period of months. So anything he said, I believed. It's very hard to explain how these people can get into your head. You know, only anyone that's been scammed will ever understand. You know.
Mm. And how helpful were police when you first went to them?
Police didn't really want to know, if I'm honest. They said, just forget about it. I said, no. I said, I'm not forgetting about it. I said, you stolen my money. I said, I want my money back. I said, I said, I'll go and do something myself. But at the time, I was just so, I don't know what I would have done. Anyway, they changed their minds, and we set up a sting with them over a 3-month period.
Wow. How much money had this man taken from you, Lynn?
About £100,000.
Gosh.
Over the period of 18 months.
Yeah.
And what would he be saying to you in order to get that money from you?
In fact, I offered him money 8 months into it because I believed that I'd lost something. I was made to believe that I've lost something, so I was offering him money, and he refused at first. And then it just got into I was chasing the money back, and it just, one thing after another, it just led on to another.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is coming up to 9 minutes to 1. Still no news, but we're on it. So let's go talk to former Labour MP now, Graham Jones. Graham, when Labour came into power, feels like a lifetime ago already, the manifesto said they would cut through the chaos. I think they mentioned it about 30-odd times, but manifestos put. How's that going?
Not too well, I don't think.
Oh no!
I don't think they'd get a good rating for that manifesto promise.
Well, Graham, that's the problem, isn't it? Because there were manifesto promises, but so many of the candidates and potential candidates we're being told about, they would almost certainly move the government in a totally different direction, more to the left. Do you think the Labour Party and the Labour government could stand that?
I'm not so sure, but I do get to the premise of your point that an unelected Prime Minister would be better to go to the country sooner rather than later, which is the premise of your point. I mean, if it's aimed at Andy and Angela, I think Andy's already made some points. And in the past he's been just off right. He was a Blairite when he first started off. And I think it was Angela who famously said that she would shoot terrorists and ask questions later. It's quite tough on defence and law and order. So I don't think we can pigeonhole the people who may one day become Prime Minister very, very soon, or maybe not. But I think their views are varied. I don't think there's a Diane Abbott or a John McDonnell putting the name forward, and not to my knowledge anyway. So I don't think there's a left candidate coming forward at all.
And Graham, what do you make of the fact that Wes seemingly announced his intentions yesterday morning with that 16-minute meeting with the Prime Minister, and yet here we are, lunchtime a day later, nothing's actually happened?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's really bizarre. I mean, you would have expected him to have done a big op-ed this morning. He would have done the media round this morning. He would have gone to a lectern and given an explanation and done an announcement and formally announce it. And I think that one of the previous, or you may have said it yourself, that there will be people who will be pushing back against Wes. Okay. I know John McDonnell's attacked him and others, so his numbers may be diminishing.
All right. Graham Jones, thank you very much for your perspective this afternoon. You're watching Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back to talk about who might be next going in that door.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again. This is your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we look ahead, we are going to see some of the showers easing, the winds becoming a bit lighter and feeling a little less cool, but we do still have low pressure over Scandinavia. We do still have a northerly flow across the country, so temperatures are staying a little bit below average for the time of year. And there are still plenty of showers around for a little while yet. Some heavy ones could see rainfall totals building up to 10-20 millimetres in some places if you get a fair few of those showers, but actually overnight most places turning largely dry. Showers though continuing for some northern, eastern and western coastal parts. Where we get some dry, clearer weather and you're sheltered from that brisk breeze from the north, while temperatures could drop mid to low single figures, maybe even a touch of frost in some prone spots first thing tomorrow morning. Through tomorrow then, across some parts of Scotland we continue with showers coming in from the north, so northern parts of Scotland seeing plenty of showers, drier further south, kind of south of the central belt, likely to be mostly fine through the start of the day. A similar picture across Northern Ireland, so showers in the far north, dry further south. But for England and Wales, there's actually a swathe of showery rain that's pushing its way southwards, initially across more central areas, but that will feed into southern parts through into the, lunchtime area and early afternoon. Otherwise, there will be more dry weather around tomorrow compared to some recent days. It's not totally dry. There will still be showers around northern, western, eastern coastal parts and some of the showers lingering in the far south, but many central areas staying dry, a decent amount of sunshine and slightly less cool than it has been recently. Temperatures maybe a degree or so higher than today, and the winds will be a little bit lighter as well, so that will make it feel less cool as well. More showers to come though through the evening on Friday. They'll be pepping up in a few places. Then into the weekend, whilst there will be plenty of fine weather around, there will also be a bit of rain at times and a slight warming trend into the beginning of next week.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Are you
dreaming of a ton of tax-free cash this summer? We want to make that dream come true with a stunning £76,543 and 21 pence in cash to spend however you like. Put a new car on the drive or just relax in the knowledge that this year we've got your back. For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 14th of May. I'm Dawn Neeson.
And I'm Charlie Peters.
But then I suppose the Health Secretary has been a bit distracted lately, hasn't he? Yeah, hasn't he? Yeah. He's chuntering now. Why don't you just do your job? Do your job. Speech. There's no point in him giving me dirty looks. We all know what he's been up to.
Breaking news in the last minute, Wes Streeting has resigned as Health Secretary. He has resigned and will, we anticipate, launch that leadership bid. Wes Streeting has written to the Prime Minister. He says that he is pleased to report that he's delivered against the ambitious targets he set to as a Secretary of State for Health, but that he has now quit as Health Secretary. He says, I know better than most that governing is hard, and that it has been the greatest joy of his life to serve as his Secretary of State for Health. He says, I remain truly grateful to you for the opportunity to serve. I am deeply saddened to be leaving government in this way. Wes Streeting, in a letter to the Prime Minister, has now quit as Health Secretary. He says, where we need vision, we have a vacuum. Where we need direction, we have drift. This was underscored by your speech on Monday. Leaders take responsibility, but too often that has meant other people falling on their swords. Let's cross now to our reporter, Will Godley, who is in Wes Streeting's constituency.
Well, Wes Streeting fires the starting gun, but who will follow and what do his constituents here think? I'll have all the details this afternoon.
Well, we're going to get some more breaking news with you now, Will. Just reading through this letter from Wes Streeting. He says that I know better than most that governing is hard. It should be because it matters. We're going to cross now to Tom Harwood, our deputy political editor in Downing Street. Tom, thank you for an extraordinary letter here from Wes Streeting. Bring us up to speed.
That's absolutely right, Charlie. It's the moment that we had been waiting for, frankly, all day, but now it has happened. What we can take from this, we are not yet sure. But of course, Wes Streeting's detractors this entire day had been saying he has not gone over the top because he does not have the numbers. Now, does this statement, this two-page letter that the Health Secretary has just released, does this indicate that he has the numbers, that he has fired this starting gun? Quite possibly. All week, we knew that today was the day that health data would come out, that NHS England would publish statistics on the waiting list times and all such else. And this is clearly what Wes Streeting has used as a launch pad for a stinging rebuke of the Prime Minister. Just to read some more from this letter that Wes Streeting has just published. We've got a picture of it up there on screen. He starts with, "Dear Prime Minister, the results are in. I'm pleased to report I have delivered against the ambitious targets you set for me when I became your Secretary of State for Health and Social Care." He goes on to state all of the successes that he says that he has, but later on in the letter he says last week's election results were unprecedented, both in the terms of the scale of the defeat and the consequences of that failure. For the first time in our country's history, nationalists are in power in every corner of the United Kingdom. A dangerous English nationalism represented by Nigel Farage and Reform UK. He goes on and talks about the dangers of Reform UK. On the second page of this letter, he says there is no doubt the unpopularity of this government was a major and common factor in our defeats across England, Scotland and Wales. Good Labour people lost through no fault of their own. He goes on to say, to Keir Starmer, you have many great strengths I admire. You led our party to a victory few thought possible in 2024. I was proud to fight alongside you. He continues, but where we need vision, we have a vacuum. Where we need direction, we have drift. This was underscored by your speech on Monday. Leaders take responsibility, but too often that has meant other people falling on their swords. You need to listen to your colleagues, including backbenchers, and the heavy-handed approach to dissenting voices diminishes our politics. He goes on to say, it is now clear that you will not lead the Labour Party into the next general election, and that Labour MPs and Labour unions want the debate about what comes next to be a battle of ideas, not of personalities or petty factionalism. It needs to be broad. It needs to be the best possible field of candidates. I support that approach, and I hope that you will facilitate this. Serving as your Secretary of State for Health and Social Care has been the greatest joy of my life, and regardless of our differences this week, I remain truly grateful for you to the opportunity to serve. Now, that is not an explicit statement that Wes Streeting himself is standing, but it does say that Wes Streeting expects a contest. He expects the Prime Minister to facilitate a broad spread of candidates in this contest. Wes Streeting there is saying that this is inevitable, that the unions have said it's inevitable, that he, as now the first cabinet resignation, has said this is inevitable. And in this letter, he talks not only about his successes, his perceived successes as Health Secretary, but the Prime Minister's failures, forcing others to fall on their swords rather than taking the blame for repeated failures himself. He talks about the electoral failures of the Labour Party in England, Scotland and Wales. And he says the only way out of this rut is for new leadership in the Labour Party. Interesting though, Charlie and Dawn, he doesn't say that he will be that next leader, although I think if you read between the lines, there's a heavy implication there.
Tom, this is the first time in Labour's history that they've ever had a leadership challenge. It hasn't happened before, so we are watching political history here.
We are absolutely watching political history, and so many things about the last 4 days here in Downing Street have felt unprecedented. This is the 11th resignation from this government, let us not forget. 6 parliamentary private secretaries, 4 junior ministers, and now 1 cabinet minister. The question now is who's next, and frankly, what do the other potential challengers in this race do? One clever thing about this letter from Wes Streeting is that he doesn't use this as he himself declaring that he is a candidate. He says that there should be a broad field, the broadest possible field of candidates in this election, but not that he will be one of those candidates. We all assume that he will be. We all assume that he will be, but he is not throwing his hat into the ring yet. Is this a challenge to people like Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband, Andy Burnham, for those people to step forward and say they will be candidates before he does? There is, after all, this stalking horse suspicion. There is this perception that the first person to declare, to launch their campaign even, that they will be perhaps disadvantaged in the coming contest. But I think we can read between the lines, and I think many people will say this is Wes Streeting firing that starting gun, challenging the Prime Minister to allow for this contest. And indeed, we may well see in the coming minutes and indeed hours that this contest has got going. No doubt people are getting on the phones to Angela Rayner, to Andy Burnham, to Ed Miliband, even to Al Carnes, the junior Defence Minister, people that have been spoken about as potential candidates in this race. But we do also know that almost 100 Labour MPs have called for a contest. So it is not beyond the realms of possibility that this formal process will start very, very soon indeed. The formal process that requires 81 Labour MPs to attach their names to one specific candidate to kick this race off. Not beyond the realms of possibility that that formal race begins by the end of today.
Through Wes Streeting's letter, there's criticism, of course, of the Prime Minister talking about this vacuum, but also the main barbs go towards Nigel Farage and Reform UK, talking about what Wes Streeting sees as a dangerous English nationalism represented by Farage and Reform. He says it poses an existential threat to the future integrity of the United Kingdom. He also says that progressives are increasingly losing faith that the Labour Party is capable of rising to our historic responsibility of defeating racism. Now, that's very charged attacks on Reform UK, essentially saying that Farage and Reform are racists and that they are a threat to the integrity of the country. Of course, Reform UK just secured significant results in Scotland and Wales as well. It's not just an English nationalist party. How might that be perceived by those floating Labour voters as Wes Streeting is seemingly setting up his leadership campaign?
It's incredibly charged language, Charlie, and that will no doubt be language that is not aimed at the country at large, that is not aimed at those many millions of people who used to vote for the Labour Party and who have switched to the Reform Party. This isn't the kind of language that will win them over. This is language designed to be appealing to Labour Party members, to the rank and file of the Labour Party, who would really like to pretend that this is something that can be said that will win the Labour Party hearts and minds across the country. I think that you're right to pick up on how it is not necessarily true. The framing that the Health Secretary is putting up here, that there's nationalists in Wales, in Plaid Cymru, nationalists in Scotland, in the SNP, and nationalists in England, in Reform UK. Because as you rightly say, the Reform Party in Scotland has exactly the same number of MSPs as the Labour Party in Scotland. They are joint second in terms of number of seats in Holyrood. And the Reform Party in Wales is the official opposition. Dan Thomas, the leader of Reform Wales, is the leader of the opposition in the Senedd in Cardiff. So yes, you're completely right to point out that this caricature of Nigel Farage as an English nationalist is perhaps somewhat outdated, given the success that Reform had not just in England, north and south, but in Scotland and in Wales too on Thursday. And this is the problem for the Labour Party, battered and beaten in every corner of the country. that they are not just facing a easy fight in Scotland, losing votes only to the SNP, that they're not facing an easy fight in Wales, losing votes only to Plaid Cymru, that in fact they are losing votes from their left and their right. And that is an incredibly difficult thing for a leader to contend with.
OK, Tom, thank you so much. We'll be coming back to you for any more news on this breaking story that the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has resigned, potentially triggering that leadership contest, although the resignation letter is very, very carefully worded and is not saying in so many words that he is going to challenge, although read between the lines, why would you do the resignation letter if you weren't intending to run?
Well, joining us now is Labour MP for North Durham, Luke Akehurst. Luke, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon as we react to Wes Streeting resigning. He's calling for a broad debate of ideas, not petty factionalism. I know you're a supporter of the Prime Minister. It seems that factionalism is now threatening your man's job.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I'm disappointed that Wes has resigned because he has been a very effective health secretary, as demonstrated by the numbers on the waiting lists that came out this morning, and he's a great communicator and an asset to the Labour Party, and someone that I've usually been an ally of. But I can't say that I think this is helpful to the government or the situation we're in whatsoever. It increases instability, that causes market turmoil, it causes kind of paralysis in terms of what the government can do. We don't know yet whether this means that he has the 81 signatures or the 81 nominations to run. I'm a little bit sceptical about whether him or any of the other candidates can get there. So we'll have to see whether this is just a kind of resignation because he didn't think his position was tenable anymore because he clearly had such differences with the PM, or whether this is actually going to translate into a leadership challenge.
Could you really believe that he would do this off his resignation on the day that actually quite positive NHS figures are released? Do you really think he'd offer his resignation for any other reason other than to challenge the Prime Minister?
Maybe he just didn't see another way out, but because it had been obvious over the last few days that he was seeking to become leader, that I'm not sure how he could have carried on when he's clearly got a different view to the PM about whether the PM should continue. But that doesn't necessarily, he may not be able to stand. He needs those 81 nominations, and like I say, I'm a little bit sceptical about whether he's going to get there or not.
Well, Luke, this will start a panic among others who we know are considering running their own leadership campaigns. Wes Streeting has been touted as the stalking horse here. What will you be saying now to other Labour MPs who are thinking of joining Wes Streeting in calling for the Prime Minister to go and potentially backing another candidate?
Well, I'm more astonished the idea that Wes would be a stalking horse. This is someone that is from the Blairite wing of the party. Why would he act as a stalking horse when all the other candidates are from what we would call the soft left and have a different political vision? So I don't understand why he would be helping them, and that actually is one of my concerns, as I'm very firmly on the moderate wing of the Labour Party, and I am worried that Wes has pushed over a domino that could lead to the party shifting to the left, which would be absolutely bizarre given that places like my constituency in North Durham in our local elections last year and neighbouring authorities across the North and the Midlands have voted for reform councillors. I don't understand why anyone would risk something that moved the Labour Party further away from those voters rather than addressing their concerns.
Luke, that's a very good point. And indeed, Manchester, we saw almost what turned it completely turquoise. Good, solid Labour heartland. Do you think Wes Streeting's comments in his resignation letter about reform, about how dangerous they are, his words, not mine, will alienate Labour voters?
I think you've got to balance that with, I don't think much of reform. I don't want them anywhere near power. They're messing up my local council anyway already. But that phrasing needs to be balanced with respect for the people that voted for reform and an understanding that they have very real issues around concern about control of immigration and about cost of living, that we actually, and in the north of England about reindustrialisation, that we as a government need to address and not be dismissive of those people's concerns.
The language used in that letter, Luke, is very severe towards Reform UK and Nigel Farage, referring to racism and English nationalism. You'll need to push back on that more forcefully as sort of supporters of the Prime Minister, because this is just an open goal for Reform UK and for its leader, Nigel Farage. Now, isn't it? For any challenge to Sir Keir Starmer, you can very easily imagine Reform UK turning around and saying, you know, the people who want to replace you, Sir Keir, think that all the people who just voted against you are racist.
One of the concerns I have about a leadership election starting is the Labour Party will just start talking to itself and get into its comfort zone, and it will totally misread the message that voters in seats like mine have been sending, and we will just kind of disappear into a fuzzy zone where we're listening to what our activist concerns rather than the concerns of the voters that moved away from us. So I can't pretend I'm happy about this situation. I think it's deeply disappointing that colleagues were not able to walk back from this and just unite around getting on with the job that we were elected to do.
Luke, if you don't mind me saying, you do sound genuinely quite shaken and genuinely upset by this. I mean, do you think this could be the beginning of the end of the Labour Party as we know it at the moment?
So I think there are dangers to the party system at the moment that for both the traditional parties face potent threats to their right and their left, that if we don't address those in the right way, no party has like a God-given right to continue existing forever if it doesn't listen to voters. But I also think that the Labour Party has a lot of resilience and deep roots, and we did manage to come back from the trauma and actual moral nightmare of the Corbyn years and anti-Semitism and bounce back in one parliamentary term to 411 seats under Keir Starmer. So I wouldn't ever underestimate the Labour Party's ability to pull itself together and come back to its senses.
Luke, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that wasn't actually a vote for Keir Starmer, was it? That was a vote for the chaos, against the chaos of the previous Conservative government. I mean, the Labour manifesto promised to cut through all that chaos. I think it was mentioned about 35 times in your manifesto, cutting through the chaos. You haven't done that. It's got worse.
We have just had excellent economic growth figures today, even though the Iran war had started when those growth figures for March were taken. We have had really significant progress by Shabana Mahmood in terms of reducing net migration numbers and getting started on tackling the small boats. So I would argue we're only under 2 years in, and we are making progress. It's not fast enough for voters. That's one of the reasons why we've taken such a big hit in terms of council seats. But if people just paused for a minute and realised, actually, we've got 3 and a bit years left of this Parliament before we need a general election, that is quite a long time to deliver for people. And if we have made people's lives better by the end of that 4 or 5 year period, they will vote for us. They will judge us on whether the country is in a better place.
Luke Akehurst, they might also be seeing it, those challenges to the Prime Minister, as 3 years they've got time to use to set out a timetable to allow for this broad ideas-based debate about the leadership of the Labour Party and leadership of the country, as Wes Streeting's letter says. He's effectively generating the circumstances where Andy Burnham could now also find a seat and run. He's calling for that long-running discussion about the party because, as you said, Luke, they've got 3 years to spend.
Well, I find it bizarre that Wes would open the door to Andy Burnham, who has a very different political philosophy, which is a lot more left-wing than the one on which we won the general election. And I hope that any debate that happens will not involve trying to tell voters that we're going off in a wildly different, particularly a more left-wing direction than the very mainstream Labour Party that won a landslide in 2024. I do not think voters will thank us for saying, well, we asked you to vote for Keir Starmer and a moderate manifesto. Now, 2 years in, we've panicked and we're swapping him for someone else and a far more left-wing manifesto. I don't think voters will thank us for that at all.
Luke, you mentioned that you don't, if it is Andy Burnham or Angela Rayner or that ticket, which is much more to the left of what people voted for, the government doesn't have a mandate to run the country on that. Do you think it would be time for a general election?
I think that would be a decision for whoever the Prime Minister is, but I would imagine that there will be immense political pressure, both from outside the party. Obviously, people are going to say, oh, well, you should come back to us and ask us again whether we want this person. And then if there was a change of leader, and I still hope that Keir would fight and win a leadership election, if there was a change, the person that wins it will probably want to renew their mandate. And I find that very frustrating, because I was elected to do this job for at least 4 years, not to have to fight another general election in a hurry, and I'm kind of I'm disappointed if colleagues have been spooked into this, and I worry that it could be turkeys voting for an early Christmas.
Luke Akehurst, the Labour MP for North Durham, thank you very much for your time this afternoon, reacting to that breaking news that Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has resigned from Sir Keir Starmer's government. OK, and let's go to a GBNews national reporter, Will Godley, who is in Wes Streeting's constituency in Ilford North, which is on the outskirts of East London and Essex. Will.
Well, good afternoon to you. Yeah, Wes Streeting also formally now the Health Secretary, but also the MP for here. And in his resignation letter to the Prime Minister, he told the Prime Minister, I've lost confidence in your leadership. And Wes Streeting says he concluded that it would be dishonourable and unprincipled to carry on in the role. He also went on to say where we need vision, we have a vacuum. Where we need direction, we have a drift. And Wes Streeting said it is clear that you will not lead Labour into the next general election. He called on the Prime Minister now to facilitate the process to appoint a new leader and a new Prime Minister. And we assume Wes Streeting is hoping he can be in the running for that. But at the moment, it's just a resignation, no formal leadership bid just yet. Of course, in order for Wes Streeting to mount that challenge, he would need the support of 81 Labour MPs, and support is something Wes Streeting often will need in this case, but hasn't always had here. In fact, in the last election, 2024 election, here his majority was on a knife edge. Only 528 seats was all that was in it, that kept Wes Streeting in his seat here. So Wes Streeting, no doubt, if he's going to launch a leadership bid, will be hoping he's more popular than he is here. But I've been here throughout the day today asking people in his constituents what they think of Wes Streeting if he was to become Prime Minister.
I cannot believe anything that they say, and more to the point, I sincerely believe that the great fathers of the Labour movement are looking down now in tears at what is happening with the Labour Party in this country.
It can't be worse than the one we've got at the moment.
Why not?
He's done a good job being Health Secretary, and as our local MP, he's made sure things like the libraries are kept open, and I just think that he would make a better job of it.
I think the Labour Party are in dire straits with what they've done to the economy, raising taxes, and they keep raising taxes and deliver false promises as far as I'm concerned, so I wouldn't vote for him to be Prime Minister at all.
Well, views from Wes Streeting's constituents there, and if there is going to be a leadership challenge, well, who might Wes Streeting be standing alongside if he does indeed decide to run? Well, Angela Rayner, Andy Burnham, Ed Miliband, all names in the mix, and in fact, Labour list, they've done a poll of Labour voters. Who is the most popular amongst them? Well, no surprise, it's Andy Burnham, but Wes Streeting actually comes out in last place, and in fact, Keir Starmer, going head-to-head with Wes Streeting, is more popular. But all the other candidates, Andy Burnham, Ed Miliband and Angela Rayner, all beat Keir Starmer if they were to go head-to-head. But it's only Wes Streeting, according to Labour voters, only Wes Streeting who would lose out to Keir Starmer at the moment.
Hey, Will Godley, live for us in Ilford at Wes Streeting's constituency. Wes Streeting, of course, has just resigned as Health Secretary, is expected to launch a leadership bid for the top job, but he's also calling for a broad debate about ideas, not petty factionalism, in any upcoming contest for who might enter number 10 Downing Street.
Interestingly, though, he hasn't actually said he is running, he is standing. What he has done is implied that he wants a broader number of people to challenge. And we're hearing just now that people close to him are saying that they want a longer timetable. So we set a timetable for Keir Starmer to step down, which opens the door once again to Andy Burnham, who's, as we say, still needs a seat. He can't challenge until he has actually become an MP.
Well, let's speak to the Deputy Political Editor at the Financial Times, Jim Pickard. Jim, thanks for joining us this afternoon, this dramatic afternoon in Westminster and for the country. We've heard from Wes Streeting now that lengthy resignation letter talking about that timetable. Might that include Andy Burnham now being given a signal that he needs to set out his stall?
Yeah, I think this is actually quite embarrassing for Wes Streeting because he was the person who put his head over the parapet, made clear that he wanted Keir Starmer to go and he wants to replace him. But it's pretty clear from this letter that he doesn't have the 81 signatures, because if he did have 81 signatures of MPs prepared to back him for the leadership, we would know about it and the leadership race would be underway. And if you look at the language in which he's speaking about how there should be a broad field, and he, Wes Streeting, wouldn't want to kind of, the implications, he wouldn't want an easy tilt to the leadership. He wants other people like Andy Burnham to be there. That's what you say when you don't think you're going to win. If Wes Streeting thought he had a chance of becoming Prime Minister, he would have moved by now. He would try and get a fast contest as quickly as possible, where Andy Burnham, who is clearly much more popular with him, more popular than him with the country and with the membership and with MPs, why would he want him in the race unless Wes Streeting was basically capitulating?
And Jim, what did you make about the language used in Wes Streeting's resignation letter about a reform, basically implying that many people who support reform are racist?
I'm going to have to look at that to work out what I think about it, because this is all happening very quickly in real time, isn't it? But I can tell you what he said. He said that for the first time in our country's history, nationalists are in power in every corner of the United Kingdom, including a dangerous English nationalism represented by Nigel Farage and Reform UK. This represents an existential threat to the future integrity of the UK. So on that point, he's correct in the sense that the SNP have cemented their power in Scotland and they want independence. Plaid Cymru, for the first time, is running the Welsh government and they eventually want independence. So there is, yes, there is an existential threat to the integrity of the UK. But then he goes on to say Reform UK represents a threat to the values and ideas that have made this country great. That's for you to debate with him. Progressives across our country understand this threat and our responsibility to confront it, etc. And then he sort of talks about historic responsibility of defeating racism. So I don't think he's explicitly saying that Reform are racist or Reform voters are racist, but it is indeed in the same paragraph in the same letter. So maybe perhaps you'd have to ask him, perhaps he is implying that by default.
God, this will obviously be an invitation for others to step forward. I know you've termed this as quite embarrassing for the now former Health Secretary resigning, but not necessarily having the number of MPs he needs to launch his own leadership race. Perhaps one of the reasons why he has done this letter, this resignation, without launching the bid is because he wants to attracts perhaps others who might now come forward after he's fired the gun, as it were, forced into this discussion. Do you think he might creep over the line, get the 81 required?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, the whole point about Wes Streeting is that he does have enough supporters to stand in the leadership contest. I have no doubt that there are at least 81 MPs who with a field of multiple candidates for the job, he would go for it because there are plenty of Blairites there. The challenge was that loads of those Blairites are currently ministers, and they weren't prepared to resign.
Jim, sorry, we've got to interrupt quickly. Just got an issue with the sound, but thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. OK, now let's go to co-founder and director of Delta Poll, Joe Twyman. Joe, Wes Streeting has resigned. He hasn't actually made it clear whether he's actually putting himself as an official challenger. What do you make of the situation we are in at the moment?
The psychodrama, for want of a better expression, it seems to continue. This is a story that began not with the local election results, but actually prior to that. There was speculation about Keir Starmer's leadership for weeks leading into the local elections. The suggestion was that if more than 1,500 seats were lost, then inevitably somebody within the cabinet would make the moves to speak to Keir Starmer and perhaps launch a leadership election themselves. In actual fact, Labour lost, I think, 1,498, so very close to that, but not quite over the line. If Wes Streeting had the numbers, I imagine, though I don't know, I imagine he would launch a leadership challenge now, not least because if he wanted to be Prime Minister, it would be easier to do it now when Andy Burnham does not have a constituency. But he hasn't done that. He said he wants to enlarge the pool of contenders, and maybe indeed that is what he wants, and that is what will happen. But the difficulty that he was placed in was when his supporters and his team were saying that he intended to launch a leadership bid either yesterday or today. The difficulty is once you've said that, it's very difficult to roll back on.
Joe, I know you work at Delta Poll, you might not like this, but Survation have done some polling which would suggest that Wes Streeting would lose a leadership contest against Keir Starmer, saying that Streeting would have the backing of around 23% of the membership in a leadership contest. That's down 10 points since November. Could we read into this letter from the now former Health Secretary calling about a battle of ideas, a broad set of ideas in this likely upcoming leadership debate, because he wants as many candidates as possible so that he might gain a greater standing if there's more competition?
No, you can't really read anything into the polling on this, and the reason for that is very clear. It's one of those questions. It's one of those instances where we can ask the question. We can ask people their response either in absolute terms, popularity for individual candidates, or relative terms, popularity of one candidate versus another. But the reality is that the average person in the street and the 50% of people less engaged than the average person in the street does not know much about any of the candidates. Many of them don't know much about Keir Starmer, but certainly the main three candidates that we've heard about, Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham, are not well known nationally. And that potentially is good news. It's an opportunity. It means that these candidates can operate with a clean slate and can start to talk about their ideas and their views. But people don't know what their ideas and their views are. They don't know enough about them to draw a solid conclusion. And so you're asking in these questions about what we call a future hypothetical, how people would respond to a future circumstance that is not very well understood and hasn't happened yet. And so really the only valid conclusion to draw from the polling that has taken place so far is that people don't know about the candidates. And that could be good news, because it could mean that they improve as people hear more about them, and that their election could mean that they boost Labour's opportunities and Labour's numbers. The opposite could be true, and as people hear more about these candidates, they become less popular. But the point is, we don't know as pollsters because the public don't know as respondents.
Joe, all the polls before the local elections recently pointed that Labour were going to lose. Exactly that happened. Would you say that the polls are now going to say that they are fatally wounded, that the people have just lost trust in Labour?
If the last 10 to 15 years of British politics have taught us anything, it's that nothing can be guaranteed and nothing can be taken for granted. We did see a real hammering, not just for the Conservatives, but for Labour as well at the local elections. But these are what geeks like me call second-order elections, and people vote on different things. You only need to go back to 2017 with the European elections that took place there to see that the two main parties received an even greater hammering then. We were in an even more developed multi-party system. Merely 2 years later, we had the general election, and the two main parties, Conservative and Labour, received more than 80% of the vote combined. So things can change, and prospects for parties and candidates and individuals can change. Polling is only ever a snapshot of public opinion at the given time. And so it's perfectly possible that if the Labour Party is able to turn things around, if people do perceive that change is happening positively in this country and that they expect that more positive change will happen as a result of Labour, that could bring them back up in the polls. But if that doesn't happen, and as each day goes past that it doesn't happen, the challenge becomes more difficult. But a week is a long time in politics, and there are 170 weeks until the next general election needs to take place.
Well, Joe says 170 weeks until it needs to take place, but if a new leader comes in with a very different vision for the country, pressure will mount on the Labour Party and whoever would be the next Prime Minister to call a general election. There's already been some movement away, or quite a lot rather, from the 2024 manifesto. I suppose one of the main arguments for Sir Keir Starmer and his supporters will be, if we change leader, if we change direction, go more towards the left, then the public will have a demand for a general election.
Well, in my first 30 years on this planet, I had 5 prime ministers in that time. A 10-year-old watching at home, or a 10-year-old at home, will have had, now we expect, 7 prime ministers in their time. And in none of those cases, when there was a change of prime minister as a result of a leadership challenge, was a general election called. And so there may be calls for it, people may ask for it, the public may even want it, but I can't see it happening.
Yeah, and indeed, lots of our viewers are getting in touch now and saying it is a mess. They'll never vote Labour again. They can't trust them. They're fighting like rats in a set. We need a general election now. And Joe, I know you haven't done the poll yet, but if there was a general election, say within the next month or so, who do you think would win?
Well, if there were a general election tomorrow, because of course that's the question that we ask, Reform would most likely be the largest party. But I think it's still difficult for them to have the kind of geographic spread of their vote that would return enough MPs for a majority. And so I think we would be headed for a hung parliament with Reform the largest party, but there isn't a general election tomorrow. And as I say, that is a basis from which to start. But a lot can and probably will change before the actual general election takes place. We could have a new Prime Minister. We'll certainly have an election campaign. A lot still to come.
OK, Joe Twyman, the director of Delta Poll, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Should we cross now to our political correspondent, chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who joins us in Downing Street. Catherine, it's a moody moment for the Labour Party and the government. We've seen Wes Streeting quit now, but he hasn't explicitly said that he will be running for the leadership. Has he bottled it?
Yes, welcome to Downing Street, where the weather is totally wild, and I think wild would be the word that I would use to sum up what is going on at the moment, because we've had half of what we were expecting from Wes Streeting. We've had this 2-page resignation letter, some pretty damning lines in it saying where we need vision, we have a vacuum, where we need direction, we have drift. Leaders take responsibility, but too often that has meant people falling on their swords. But what he hasn't done is actually triggered a challenge. He has not written to the NEC with those 81 names that he needs to do that. In fact, his letter suggests at the moment something rather different, because he has said that It is clear that the Prime Minister won't lead the Labour Party into the next general election, but he also suggests that there needs to be a wide field of candidates, and that suggests to me that he wants perhaps a long timetable that would give Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, the time to find a seat and mount a challenge himself. Now, we've all been thinking that Wes Streeting's moment was now or never, before the Mayor of Greater Manchester sets out, finds a seat and gets back. But at the moment, Wes Streeting is not pulling the trigger on the leadership challenge. Is that because he hasn't got the numbers nailed down? Or is it something else? I mean, looking at some of the polling, Labour List had done a survey of about 1,200 Labour members, and that suggested that the Prime Minister would very comfortably beat Wes Streeting. Andy Burnham would beat the Prime Minister. At the moment, it looks like Ed Miliband or Angela Rayner could potentially beat the Prime Minister too. So we don't know where this goes next, and we are in uncharted territory because the Labour Party does not do this. Well, I mean, it is doing it, but it's never done it before. They've never taken out a sitting Prime Minister. They have a lot of trouble in getting Prime Ministers into office in the first place. This is what the Tories do. This is what the Tories did over and over again. And this is what Labour were elected on a promise to stop the chaos, to do the opposite of what we're seeing now. They said that they would stop the chaos, they would stop the infighting, we would have calm, competent government focused on delivering from the country. How times have changed.
Yes, Catherine Forster, thank you so much. We'll be coming back to you, Catherine, throughout the afternoon for any more live updates. OK, now let's speak to political strategist James Frayne. James, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today. James, it's happened. The resignation has gone in, but we are not still clear whether Wes Streeting is actually challenging the Prime Minister himself. What do you make of it all?
It was a very strange letter. I thought it was really strangely badly written. So, his whole criticism was, there was no vision from the Prime Minister, that, they'd let the country down, all the rest of it. But in his letter, which really ought to have been the sort of launch pad for his leadership campaign, was completely devoid of anything interesting at all, and certainly no vision. It was just a sort of great big word vomit, really. So the whole thing is very mysterious at this point.
He spoke about a vacuum of power, a vacuum of leadership, but then he's not putting himself forward to fill that vacuum. It does rather beg the question, who is Wes Streeting backing if not himself? And of course, we've got this news about Angela Rayner. I know you've written about this morning in The Telegraph. She's been cleared by HMRC, but that stain will continue to follow her. Perhaps Wes Streeting recognises that there's no space for a clear challenger to the Prime Minister.
It would appear that way. As you talked about, some of the polling has suggested that Keir Starmer might beat Wes Streeting in a leadership election, and this was amongst Labour supporting people. So it would appear that there is no outstanding candidate at the moment. The one thing I would add to, which Joe Twyman talked about a few moments ago, is that until the candidates are all declared, until you've started to see the whites of their eyes, if you like, in an election campaign, all of this stuff is hypothetical. We don't really know who will be the favourite until we've actually seen what they all stand for. One thing I thought was interesting from Wes Streeting's letter was he really laid it thick on how the NHS was improving. He didn't say on my watch, but obviously that was what he meant. I wonder whether what Wes Streeting will do if he does go for the leadership is really to go as the person that gets things done. So Keir Starmer can't get anything done. The country's a mess. He's a very poor executive, and the country's demanding change. I, Wes Streeting, have done this with the NHS. Therefore, I should be trusted with doing this with the country as a whole. That was by far the biggest chunk of his letter. So, as I say, I suspect he'll stand as the executive. What others will stand for remains to be seen.
James, we are in uncharted territory. This has never happened with a Labour government before, so we don't exactly know how it is going to play out or how long it is going to take to play out. But for me, it seems a bit strange to launch this not a challenge, to put your letter in your resignation, but set out a time frame that does allow rivals like, you know, the like of Andy Burnham to get an MP, or become an MP, and to take on the challenge as well. Why would you give your rivals time to get their ducks in a row?
Well, as others have suggested, it suggests that he doesn't really think he has the support at this moment in time to launch a proper election, and certainly not the support to just sweep into power. In some ways, it makes a degree of sense for him to do it, in that if you don't launch against the Prime Minister, it looks like that you are supporting him. And if you're supporting him, your hands are really dipped into the blood of the mess that the country is in and the mess that the party's in. So to some extent, it makes sense to stand aside. We saw this with Rob Jenrick when he resigned from Rishi Sunak's government before the last election. It was a sense of this isn't down to me, I'm going to stand aside. One level, it makes sense. On another level, you sort of think, well, very few people ultimately regret going for a leadership campaign, because it often means they'll get a better job than they would have got if they hadn't put their hat in the ring. So I sort of think in the modern age, you know, why not just resign, throw your hat in the ring and see where the chips fall?
But James, obviously we've seen some junior ministers resign. We've seen dozens of Labour MPs calling on Sir Keir Starmer to go. This is the first sort of big beast resignation. As a political strategist, what would you be saying to Sir Keir Starmer right now as he will be seeking to shore up his premiership?
I think if I was working closely with Starmer, I mean, I'd have said he should have gone a while back. I mean, there is just no way back for him. And I mean, you know, I do genuinely think that he just doesn't want to go out on such a low that he's remembered as being such a terrible Prime Minister. You know, he wants to have a life after being Prime Minister. He'll need to earn money. He'll need to, you know, get a job. He might want to go on the speaking circuit and all the rest of it. You can't do that if you've gone out on such a low. So I think he thinks, well, I'll stick around for a while and hopefully things will magically get better. They're just not going to get better. He's going to have to go, I think, sooner rather than later. Yes, it's more of a mess. Yes, it's more of this drama that previously they condemned. But there is no way back at all for this Prime Minister. And there is no way back at all for the Labour Party with him as the Prime Minister. So from that perspective, I think Wes Streeting did the right thing. But if I was advising Starmer, I would say go right now.
Would you, James, would you advise just quickly to the Starmer to set out a timetable and maybe go within the next few weeks?
I think the problem of doing that is once you start setting out a timetable, you've just got no authority left of any description. You're just, you know, another guy in the room. If he's going to go, he should go now, and let's get the next leader in place as quickly as we can.
James, I know you say there's no way back for the Prime Minister. I think more and more people are accepting that now. But the question's being asked, obviously, is there a way back for the Labour Party with another candidate? Because so many of those being proposed have a more soft left, centre left vision for government than Sir Keir Starmer. And of course, there isn't a mandate. There is not a mandate for higher taxes after the government promised before the election there would be no new taxes on working people. That line we've heard so many times. They've already got a very rigid manifesto to stick with. If they shift elsewhere and go further to the left, could that not plunge the Labour Party into further chaos and unpopularity?
I agree with that. Yeah, I think you know, we've heard over the last sort of 10 minutes or so that elections don't tend to follow prime ministers being moved. You know, it didn't happen with Liz Truss, didn't happen with Rishi Sunak. That's all true. But they were, to a large extent, just continuing with the manifesto that they've been elected on in 2019. If a new prime minister comes in and seeks to do something which is very drastically different, as you suggested, raising taxes even further, maybe getting even close to the EU, things that they were not elected upon, then I think that the demands for a general election would become much more difficult to resist. If it was business as usual, they just carried on with what Starmer had promised in 2024, then you can possibly live with that. It's something entirely different. If you totally change the direction of the government, then yes, I think it becomes much more difficult to resist.
James, just quickly and finally, we have taken up way too much of your time, I appreciate it, but this letter also concentrates on having a go at reform and Nigel Farage in particular. Many of our viewers are saying they just want politicians to stop having a go at one another, behaving like children fighting in the playground. Do you think it was wise of Wes Streeting to have a go at reform in this letter?
I think if you were looking at this entirely through the prism of him wanting to be the leader of the Labour Party or to take up a senior job in a left-wing government run by somebody else, then it does make complete sense to do it. They're all completely and totally obsessed with Nigel Farage and reform. They despise them very deeply. So we've probably got one eye on the left-wing voters that are going to be choosing who's the next Labour leader. So at one level, it makes sense. If indeed, though, he did become the Labour leader and was Prime Minister, he may end up very bitterly regretting the way he's spoken about reform voters.
OK, James Frayne, political strategist, thank you very much for your insight this afternoon. And let's cross now to our deputy political editor, Tom Harwood, who's live for us in Westminster. Tom, I know you said earlier that the team around Wes Streeting was ignoring you. Well, they're certainly making a lot of noise now. What do you think will happen with the others who are being touted as potential leadership contestants?
Yes, that's the question. We are yet to hear from Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband, Andy Burnham, the names that have been at the forefront of, frankly, the shadow campaign that has taken place over the last not just few days, but few months. Because let's not forget that whilst, yes, this sort of whole furore in the Labour Party was kicked off first by a little-known MP called Catherine West, declaring on Saturday that she would challenge Keir Starmer. Incidentally, she's just been on another broadcaster saying she might now back Keir Starmer. It seems like it's utter chaos within the Labour Party as things stand. But yes, for months now, various members of the cabinet or senior figures in the Labour Party have been whining and dining other MPs, have been having these secret meetings, have been having discussions with their colleagues about the possibility of dislodging Keir Starmer and replacing him. But we are yet to hear from them today. Of course, it did take hour upon hour upon hour to wait to see Wes Streeting's resignation statement. It could be more resignation statements are being penned as we speak, that more members of the cabinet want to set out their stall for why they think this Prime Minister should go, given that let's not forget, many polls, the Labour Party is now in 4th place behind Reform, the Tories and the Greens. So it is an extraordinary position that the Labour Party finds itself in. Perhaps it's inevitable that there would be this instability at the top of the party. There is, however, a rumour going around Westminster about why Wes Streeting's letter didn't formally fire that starting gun for the race, didn't declare Wes Streeting himself as a candidate. The letter said there should be a wide field or in this contest, that there should be a wide field of candidates, but it didn't say that Wes Streeting would be one of those candidates. Now, many people assume that he will be, but here's something that people are talking about now. What if he isn't? What if this is actually a sort of offer to Andy Burnham? What if behind the scenes Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham could cook up a unity ticket together? Could we imagine a Chancellor Streeting in a Burnham ministry? Well, that's just speculation for now, but I think it is fascinating to think about what might now happen. It does seem like the door has been opened to, rather than a rapid contest, a contest that takes several months longer. Enough time for Andy Burnham, perhaps, to return to Parliament. Although there are several stumbling blocks, as we all know, for Andy Burnham, getting past the Labour NEC, getting past the Chief Whip's ability to set the date of the by-election for whenever he wants, but also getting past the people of the seat for whichever constituency Andy Burnham wants to stand in. So ultimately there is a lot that could change, and there is much that could go wrong in this attempted coup. I think it is absolutely fair now to describe it as an attempted coup. One further possibility. Wes Streeting did not have the numbers when he resigned, but perhaps he thinks that by resigning, more people will think, well, this is on now. I'm going to have to declare a position. Maybe more people will now come to Wes Streeting's position now that he has resigned. Let's not forget, around 100 Labour MPs have said that the Prime Minister should go. Around 100 backbench and PPS Labour MPs have said that he should stay. That leaves around 200 Labour MPs. Now, some of those, of course, are in the Cabinet, and you'd assume that they're backing the Prime Minister. But many, many others, 3 figures of Labour MPs, have not declared where they stand in terms of whether the Prime Minister should stay or go. No doubt behind the scenes, people around Wes Streeting, and maybe even Wes Streeting himself, will be reaching out to those that we haven't heard from, those who haven't yet declared their own position.
Very interesting that you mentioned the fact that Andy Burnham and Wes Streeting could run on a joint ticket. Hearing exactly the same thing coming in from a source in Manchester at the moment, that this and that letter actually backs it up. Sounds like Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham will work together on getting rid of Keir Starmer and taking over the government. Now, but politically, they are poles apart in many areas. What do you make to this story?
You say they're politically poles apart in many areas, Dawn, and currently that is true. However, there is an old joke in Westminster that a Blairite, a Brownite, a Milibandite, a Corbynite and a Starmerite walk into a bar, and the barman says, "Hello, Mr. Burnham."
Andy? Yeah.
So it is entirely possible that Andy Burnham is very able to straddle various parts of the Labour Party. He's not a dyed-in-the-wall Corbynista, that's for sure. And certainly, of course, Wes Streeting, although he's caricatured as someone on the right of the party, on issues like Israel-Palestine, he's been aligning himself much more with the Labour left. So ultimately, there are some possibilities for a unity ticket. And let's not forget, throughout the history of the Labour Party, you've often had a sort of Prescott-Blair model, where you have one leadership figure talking to one side of the party and a different deputy leadership figure talking to a different side of the party. So it's entirely possible that there could be that sort of leadership ticket. This letter from Wes Streeting, this resignation letter, leaves that possibility open, although it doesn't guarantee it.
Well, Tom, just looking through all the comments on gbnews.com/yoursay, in terms of speaking to the country, these comments coming in thick and fast, and the resounding message is very much calling on the Prime Minister to resign. John Gamby says, put your family's dignity before your pride, he says, and call a general election. Plenty of commentators on gbnews.com/yoursay saying that they're already staying very close to the manifesto, but circumstances have changed, that the government has needed to adapt, and it hasn't done so. And Lee Holdsworth says, referring to that part in Wes Streeting's letter about reform and English nationalism and racism, Lee says, the more Labour call us far right and racist, the more we'll vote reform. Is that a problem, do you think, Tom, that Wes Streeting's letter, I know you say it's a message to Labour Party members, but in doing so, it could actually weaken the broader Labour position among the general public?
This is always the treacherous thing about a leadership contest. We saw it with the Conservative Party in 2022, when the candidate that promised the most amount of red meat to the right was the one who won, and yet that wasn't necessarily the candidate who could face the country in the best way. It happens in the United States of America, where famously in the 2012 primaries, Mitt Romney tacked radically to the right, only then to try and tack back to the left for the general election. Barack Obama called it Romnesia, trying to make a play of Romney and amnesia, that he'd forgotten all of his past positions. But again and again we see this danger with leadership contests that try and talk to a party that is very deeply out of touch with the country. You tack one way and then you have to tack another. And that, in politics, makes people look dishonest.
Indeed, lots of people are saying they don't trust any of them now. They are none the wiser, and they just think there should be a general election.
Tom, a general election,
Sorry,
that's what people are saying on...
Yeah, no, it does really seem like that is what a lot of people are pushing for now. However, it's worth remembering, constitutionally in this country, That is not what would happen. Constitutionally, in this country, we don't elect a Prime Minister, we elect a Parliament. And this is a Parliament that was elected at the last general election with 411 Labour MPs. In order for a general election to happen, you'd have to have an awful lot of turkeys voting for Christmas.
Thank you very much, Tom Harwood, giving that summary for us outside Parliament in Westminster.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 2 o'clock on a momentous day, Thursday, the 14th of May. I'm Dawn Neeson.
And I'm Charlie Peters. Now, Wes Streeting has resigned as Health Secretary, stating that he has lost confidence in the Prime Minister's leadership.
In a letter to Sir Keir Starmer, he launched a series of attacks, saying the party lacked vision and direction.
The former Health Secretary said it is clear the Prime Minister will not lead Labour to the next general election.
Allies of Wes Streeting claim he will not launch a leadership bid imminently, though.
But the question is, who will be the first to officially challenge Starmer's premiership?
Rumours swirling Westminster now. Who might else resign? Who might declare themselves a candidate? And just what in Wes Streeting's letter might have left open a strange sort of unity ticket idea? Could it be that all of these things, or none at all of them, happen? We'll find out.
Well, Labour got elected promising to stop the chaos and the infighting of the Conservatives. Yet here we go. They are now very publicly engaged in a civil war with no idea how this ends.
Well, breaking news coming into us this afternoon. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has officially resigned from his position in government following days of speculation.
It's now believed he will launch a leadership challenge against the Prime Minister in the coming days, but notably he hasn't done it yet. He would need the backing of 81 MPs, around 20% of Labour MPs in the House of Commons, to formally trigger that contest.
Yes, and to get more reaction to the resignation of the now former Health Secretary, let's cross to our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, who's live for us in Westminster. Tom, you were just speaking about all the possible opportunities for challenges to the Prime Minister that are developing now. What are you hearing? Because there have been so many candidates touted in the last few days.
There certainly have, although one name now, perhaps more than any other, is on the forefront of most people's lips. That is Andy Burnham, someone who was seen to have the most difficult path to the premiership, given that he is not currently in Parliament. And yet many people reading into Wes Streeting's letter that Streeting was saying he wants the broadest possible debate, that perhaps Streeting's letter is actually a bit of an olive branch, a fig leaf to Andy Burnham himself, saying that it's right to have Burnham in the race. That's what a lot of people are reading into this letter in Westminster. Although I have to say that people have read into comments about Andy Burnham in perhaps ways that other candidates wouldn't have liked. So if we remember back a couple of days ago, Angela Rayner giving a speech to a conference of trade unionists, she was saying that it was a disgrace that Andy Burnham was kept out of Parliament. Now, allies of Angela Rayner after that speech were slightly taken aback that people took that as Rayner endorsing Burnham somehow. Apparently, that line in that speech was supposed to be Angela Rayner saying that Andy Burnham should be in Parliament, trying to ingratiate herself to supporters of Andy Burnham, but not saying that she was taking herself out of the race, although much of the Westminster village thought that she was taking herself out of the race there. So it has been treacherous in and around this topic for many candidates before. People sometimes read into what people say far too much, or in a way that they might not have intended. Wes Streeting might have just been trying to position himself as someone who was a unifying figure within the party, rather than someone who was suddenly a massive fan of Andy Burnham. But ultimately, who knows? This feels like a situation that is completely in flux as things stand.
OK, thank you so much, Tom. We'll be going back to Tom Harwood throughout the show. Just as we get any more news on this one, I just want to read out a couple of messages here. Alison said, this country deserves a general election with the King's speech and policies in it are not what we voted for in the Prime Minister. He needs to go and call it a general election now. An interesting point here being made, Charlie. Georgina has said, definitely don't want Wes Streeting now after what he said about reform and their voters. I think that was a big mistake. Makes me want to revoke reform even more. And I wasn't a reform voter before this. They're all like it. Labour are finished.
That's the thing, isn't it, Dawn? And Tom was just talking about it. One of the main challenges of an internal election is that you might find yourself putting off those voters who could consider voting for you, particularly if you start calling a party that's polling at 30% racist.
Yeah, indeed. Let's talk now to Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton, Graham Stringer. Mr Stringer, thank you so much for joining us today. Firstly, let's start with the basics, where Streeting has resigned, not actually put himself forward as an official challenger. What do you make of where we are now?
Well, I think we're definitely going to have an election. It's not clear who is going to be in that election for a new leader. I think Keir Starmer has failed as both the leader of the Labour Party and the leader of the country, and it is right that we look for somebody to replace him.
Graham, obviously you'll have a vote in that as a Labour MP. We're hearing that Wes Streeting doesn't have enough support to challenge the Prime Minister. Is there a Labour MP who you would like to see leading the country instead of Sir Keir Starmer?
I would like to listen from two potential candidates. I mean, I know that's not just a way of avoiding saying I support X or Y. I genuinely want to hear what their views are on energy, on illegal immigration, on the economy, on a change to the benefit system. All those issues, really difficult nettles to grasp. I want to hear what their view is of how they change. We know the Prime Minister's failed. That message was clear in the ballot boxes last Thursday. What I want to know is how people will deal with these very difficult problems and improve Labour's standing in the country.
Graham, lots of people are very angry that the fact Labour is in this situation. You know, the local polls were disastrous, many decisions, all the U-turns, etc., etc. Many people are angry at the condition the Labour Party is in at the moment. Would that apply to you? Are you angry at where Labour finds itself now?
I am angry. I think I was optimistic 2 years ago. I didn't expect miracles overnight, but I expected at least an end to the chaos. Keir has caused chaos with bad decisions leading to U-turns. Many parts of government policy hadn't got plans in place from the Labour Party when we came in. And there have been some thoroughly bad decisions, like the winter fuel allowance, cancelling local elections, reorganising local government, not mentioned in the manifesto, not mentioned in the general election, those things. So I am angry at that. I'm angry that we've wasted 2 years, and I want to put somebody into place who can stabilise the situation and do the sort of things that a Labour government should be doing.
I know you didn't indicate who you would like to see taking over from the Prime Minister, but you have been very angry about the people inside the Cabinet right now, talking about how they have no connection to the electorate. You've spoken about how many of them haven't held real jobs. They've only been working previously as bag carriers for other MPs. Is your preference then that there is a Labour candidate from outside the Cabinet who you think has perhaps a greater connection with working class people, traditional Labour voters who are leaving in their droves for Reform UK?
I think we've let down what we used to call, and still is, the working class. I think they are disappointed with the way this government has performed. There's nothing wrong with being a bag carrier for a government minister or an MP. They're perfectly honourable jobs. The point I have made is that the Parliamentary Labour Party is unbalanced. There are too many people in the Parliamentary Labour Party and in the Cabinet who have no experience of the outside world. We do in the Parliamentary Labour Party have decorated ex-soldiers, brilliant surgeons, brilliant medics, top-rate academics. What we don't have are enough people with experience of engineering, manufacturing, working on building sites. That side of things is what we're missing. I mean, I was in the Strangers Bar last night, and Al Cairns was in there. He said he wants to stand. I certainly would look at Al Cairns. I wouldn't say necessarily I support him, but he's got a working class background. He's had a stellar career in the army.
In the Royal Marines, in the Navy, not the Army.
Sorry, I apologise to the Royal Marines and the Navy. He was in the special services there, and yeah, we should listen to him.
OK, Graham, just quickly and finally, what would you say to Keir Starmer if he was in the room with you now?
I'd say you've done your best, you've failed. There's no shame in doing that. Being Prime Minister is difficult. Resign now, Keir.
OK. Graham Stringer, very clear. Thank you very much. Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton, urging the Prime Minister to resign now.
OK, now let's talk to the leader of Lincolnshire County Council, Sean Matthews. Mr Matthews, thank you so much for joining us today. OK, as I said, start at the beginning. We've got the letter, the resignation letter, but not clear whether Wes Streeting aims to stand as a challenger himself. What do you make of where we are?
Well, look, first of all, I think Graham is a decent and honourable MP, and I agree with almost everything he says. The only difference I think we'd have here is that I would want Nigel Farage as the next Prime Minister. I would want for a general election right now because, let's face it, we're not even at the second anniversary of this government, and it is absolutely diabolical. I honestly believe the best thing for this country would be to have a general election within a few weeks, you know, a month or so, however long it takes to organise, and get on, get this lot out, and get somebody that would run the country properly.
Sean, I just want to bring you the quotes from Wes Streeting's resignation letter. He's talking about Reform UK, a dangerous English nationalism represented by Nigel Farage and Reform UK. He says this poses an existential threat to the integrity of the United Kingdom. Wes Streeting also says in the next breath, or the next pen stroke, progressives are increasingly losing faith that the Labour Party is capable of rising to our historic responsibility of defeating racism. Now, Sean, I think you've recently taken over Lincolnshire County Council. What do you make of these comments? Obviously, taking lots of votes away from the Labour Party. Wes Streeting talking about dangerous nationalism and defeating racism. How will that go down with Reform voters in Lincolnshire?
Well, for a start, we took over Lincolnshire just over a year ago now, so we're one of the original Reform councils. Look, how out of touch can this man be? We are in second place in Wales and Scotland. We are not an English nationalist party. That's just nonsense. He doesn't know what he is talking about. And we are not racists. We are people that want our country back. And that doesn't mean that we are a bunch of racists getting out there trying to whitewash the country. Absolutely far from it. We are doing the very best for our country and our counties. And I say, let's get on and do it nationally.
Sean, are you confident that if there was a general election called, many people are calling for it, that Reform would win?
Yeah, absolutely. Look at the result last week. You know, we did extraordinarily well. The Uni Party, the historic two parties have dropped down and we are taking off. And if there was a general election, I'm pretty sure those steadfast Tories that still think that they are the way to go will understand that if you vote Tory, you're going to get a rainbow coalition, like the Tories have just signed up in Worcestershire with the Green Party. For goodness sake, if you don't vote Reform, if you vote Tory, you're going to get more of the same. And I think genuinely at a general election, we would win a comfortable majority, and I'd hope to be in there too.
Now, Sean, talking about what's good for the Reform Party. Obviously, that's your perspective. I've heard many Reform figures recently saying, actually, they don't want Keir Starmer to go because your party has benefited so much due to his unpopularity. If he remains in post, that's good for reform. A change in direction could steal some of those floating voters back towards the Labour Party if someone with more charisma, more leadership, more of a popularity ability than Sir Keir Starmer comes into number 10. Is that something that concerns you?
No, because there's nobody popular in the Labour Party that can take over. Look, it will get worse.
Andy Burnham, are you not nervous about Andy Burnham at all?
He's not an MP, and he's not likely to win a seat. Either the Greens will win a seat that he stands in, or we will. He's not likely to be an MP anytime soon. The seriousness of this is Keir Starmer is extraordinarily unpopular. And yes, he is a great asset to Reform UK. But the reality is we have to think about the country. We have to think about the future. And the best way to get to a general election would be to get somebody like Angela Rayner in, wrecking the country even more in the next few months, and then it all falls apart and we get a general election.
Sean, just have to ask you this quickly. I mean, the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, is going to be referred to the common sleaze watchdog over that £5 million gift from a party donor. Is that damaging to Reform? Is that damaging to Nigel Farage?
Well, no, I don't think he's done anything wrong. I welcome the investigation. I think it will clear him of any wrongdoing. It didn't damage it last week. That Nigel had this hanging over him when people went to the polls last week, and it made absolutely no difference at all. I think the reality is people want Reform and Nigel Farage as our next Prime Minister.
Sean, I'm just going to bring you a statement we've had in from Zach Polanski, who's, of course, the leader of the Green Party, in reaction...
Has he said he's paid his taxes yet?
Not quite on that one yet. He said, last week's elections show the country is crying out for a break from the failed status quo. Starmer has been unable and unwilling to break with an economic model that has fueled the affordability crisis, and this is why he must go. He continues, Streeting would be more of the same, but even worse. A factional and divisive politician, a close ally of Mandelson, favours an economy even more tilted to the wealthy, and whose record as Health Secretary is more privatisation and more personal donations from private healthcare. He ends this statement saying, Labour are failing to stand up to the greatest threat facing this country, a Nigel Farage government. It's time they stop trying to mimic them and join the Greens in taking the divisive politics of reform head on. Now, Sean, the question to you here is, of course, do you think that the Labour government has been mimicking Reform UK?
No, I mean, they are copying us in some things. We called 18 months ago, Nigel Farage, myself, Andrea Jenkins and Richard Tice were at the Steelworks calling for them to be nationalised. And so, yeah, they are copying us in some respects. But the reality is that the establishment are going to try and do everything they possibly can to stop reform. And as I said, Worcestershire today, the Labour Party, the Tory Party and the Greens have all got together to stand against reform. And that is going to happen more and more. I say bring it on. We are not the ones that are talking about getting rid of the police in this country. We are not the ones talking about removing all drugs, making them legal and making prostitution legal. Those are the things, and open borders, by the way, those are the things that are going to ruin this country, and those are Green policies, not reform policies.
OK, Sean, thank you very much. That's Sean Matthews, leader of Lincolnshire County Council. Thank you so much for joining us.
Quite frustrating when the Greens talk about divisive politics when they fail to stand down so many candidates who've been exposed for really quite gruesome language around anti-Semitism. There we go.
Two of them have been arrested for it.
Yeah, right.
OK, now GBNews chief political correspondent Catherine Forster joins us now for an update. Catherine, at least it stopped raining. That's the main update we appear to have at the moment. What's happening?
Things change literally minute by minute at the moment, don't they? Even the weather, it was blowing a gale and raining just about 5 minutes ago. Now the sun it's out. But honestly, this is the coldest street in England where I'm standing. Even though the sun's over there, it doesn't make its way over here. But look, where we are is in a state of chaos, frankly. Labour indulging in exactly the sort of civil war that they promised that they wouldn't do, and they said we'll restore calm, competent government. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has done one of the two things that we were expecting from him today, in that he has resigned from his position. He's written a pretty damning letter to the Prime Minister, including phrases like, where we need vision, we have a vacuum; where we need direction, we have drift. And he's also said leaders take responsibility. Too often that has meant other people falling on their swords. But what he hasn't done is trigger a leadership contest. He hasn't put those 81 names that his allies insist he has through to the NEC to trigger a contest. And in actual fact, he is talking about the Prime Minister needing to stand down, but needing all the best talent. Now, that reads to me as Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, who currently doesn't have a seat. We thought he might announce one today, but apparently that MP has said no. And that means potentially that this could run for weeks and months. And it seems like Wes Streeting has decided not to trigger that contest for a few reasons. The first one being that it would require significant numbers of ministers and aides, people on the government payroll, to put their names on that, and that would sort of disembowel the government, make it very difficult for things to be done. Also, I think there's an awareness that if Andy Burnham is kept out, as he was blocked from standing in Gorton and Denton, that wouldn't go away. He'd still be the sort of prince across the water, and people would feel aggrieved that he didn't have the chance. And also, of course, Angela Rayner has been cleared by HMRC. Wes Streeting knows that there's a lot of people that do not want him as leader. So I think in doing it this way, he's trying to sort of be inclusive in the hope that playing the long game might ultimately play to his advantage. So we wait to see now whether more ministers resign, what the Prime Minister does, if anything. But it is really an incredibly bizarre situation. All the while we have a cost of living crisis, two wars, the Strait of Hormuz closed, and here this focus on who is going to move next against the Prime Minister.
Okay, Catherine, thank you so much. It's a very, very noisy where you are, obviously, but we will come back to you later on in the programme. That's GB News Chief Political Correspondent Catherine Forster there. Charlie, lots and lots of people are saying they just want a general election now. Absolutely. Lots of people also asking why we haven't heard anything from Number 10.
Yes, indeed.
Not a statement, not a comment, and nothing.
Well, there was some reporting from Politico today that Morgan McSweeney, the ousted Chief of Staff, has been supporting Number 10 amid the current leadership crisis. So it seems to be all hands to the pump at the moment in terms of protecting the Prime Minister, rallying around his core defenders and indeed even those he's recently sacked or have resigned over controversy. Plenty of you getting in touch about this. Amanda Jane Emery says Keir Starmer only cares about being seen on the world stage, accusing him of not caring about the country he should be fixing. Of course, facing that criticism that he's always out of the country. A lot of his defenders say that he's performed admirably as a diplomat and has maintained relations with Europe. Of course, controversially, perhaps closer relations with Europe in recent times.
He did say preferred Davos to Daventry, didn't he? Jean has said, how can we ever trust this government now? They even stitch each other up, let alone the nation. And it's interesting, what Jean's comment is particularly interesting, because lots of people are saying, you are old school Labour voters. That's why you voted this government in. You thought, right, OK, give them a chance. They're going to cut through the chaos. And lots of you are bitterly, bitterly disappointed and also very angry about the comments that Wes Streeting made about reform.
Yeah, and just to go back to the comments that Graham Stringer made, that Labour MP, very critical of the backgrounds of many MPs, saying, you know, plenty of them have been bag carriers and been in politics, not a lot of people who've been engineers. He singled out Al Carnes, the former Royal Marine Special Forces colonel, who's now being touted as a potential Prime Minister. Dawn, he only got into Parliament in 2024, and I think, you know, what's his political vision? Do we know? The Labour Party just descending into so much infighting.
This is the problem, we don't know. Angela Rayner also has a proper working class background, working in a job where she was a carer, wasn't she? So if you're applying that principle, then Angela Rayner may be the woman for the job. Obviously, Labour Party have never had a woman, though, have they?
Right,
OK.
let's cross now to our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, live for us in Westminster. Tom, we've just been talking about all the runners and riders in this potential contest. That hasn't actually formally started yet, has it? Although it feels like it has spiritually with that Wes Streeting letter. By not triggering it immediately, Tom, he's giving time for other ministers, perhaps, to tell the Prime Minister, come on, it's time to go.
Well, exactly. There are several possibilities that this letter really opens up. The first possibility is maybe more cabinet resignations, maybe more ministerial level resignations. It feels like the ministry of Keir Starmer has never been more fragile. And perhaps, because this letter only came out about an hour ago, perhaps there are dozens of ministers currently crafting their words, putting pen to paper and thinking about how they are going to sort of write the epitaph of their time in government. Although there is another possibility that Wes Streeting published this letter so that he sent out the clearest possible signal to those who he thinks might support him. If he indeed doesn't have the 81 necessary names to launch a formal contest, perhaps he thought he might get more names after he was shown to have the ability and frankly had the steel to get up there and resign. Perhaps he will have a few more names in his column after the publication of that letter. And then, of course, there's the third, slightly more conspiratorial possibility about what this letter actually means. It's a rumour that's been swirling around in Westminster the last 45 minutes or so, which is, could this actually be a letter that opens the door to Andy Burnham? Could this be a letter that's in it, of course, saying there should be the widest possible field of candidates in the contest to replace Keir Starmer? Could it actually be opening the door to Andy Burnham as a show of good faith from Wes Streeting? And might there have been some conversations behind the scenes even? Perhaps a unity ticket offering there? That does start to run into the fanciful. However, it is not discounted by this letter, and that is a point of interest. Crucially, Angela Rayner has had some good news herself this morning, cleared, in her words, by HMRC, not having to pay any extra fines over and above the tax that she is owed to pay. Now, some tax experts this afternoon have been saying it's slightly curious that she hasn't had to pay a fine, given that some private citizens who have faced similar situations in refusing to seek specialist tax advice in similar areas where they were recommended seeking specialist tax advice, those individuals have been fined. The former Deputy Prime Minister hasn't been fined. Some eyebrows raised there, but as far as Angela Rayner is concerned, she has been cleared of wrongdoing. She will have to pay the tax that she didn't pay, but no fine on top of that. That clears her way, in her mind, perhaps, for a shot at the top. Of course, Angela Rayner has nothing to resign from, having had to resign from the government, over a year ago now, around the time of the last it was October. October was when she resigned, in the middle of Reform Party conference, actually. That was an interesting day to report upon. But that's Angela Rayner and her column. Interestingly, a name that had been put about, Ed Miliband. Ed Miliband, the former leader of the Labour Party, who led the party to its surprise loss in the 2015 general election. Well, he was seen as a potential candidate of the soft left were Andy Burnham not able to get into the race, were a race to be kicked off as soon as today or this week. Huge rumours that Ed Miliband himself would put his name in the ring. Well, big questions there over his suitability and indeed electability, given that had been tested once already. But clearly he's been able to reinvent himself as a minister in the top of this government, in many ways deciding some of the most consequential policies of this government. So those are some of the names to keep an eye on, and no doubt some letters are being penned as we speak. I've got to say, Charlie, while I'm speaking to you, I can just about see the deputy leader of the Reform Party, Richard Tice, join me here on the green. Richard, what a day!
Well, finally, it's happened, and Streeting has gone over the top. People wondered whether or not he had the gumption and the guts and the courage. He has. He's clearly going to trigger this leadership contest. And he hasn't minced his words in his letter. I have to say that some of the things that he said about reform and Nigel are frankly disgraceful, and he should be ashamed of himself. We've just won by a country mile the local elections with the biggest unionist party across Wales and Scotland, and that's because we're popular amongst voters. So the more people try and smear and libel and do us down, isn't it funny, the better we seem to do in the polls. So they'll have this leadership election. The country will be ungoverned for many months as we go through this complete psychodrama that they criticise the Tories for. I suspect very quickly the majority of the British people will say, actually, we don't want another unelected leader. What we want is a general election.
So what I take from that is that you reject Wes Streeting's characterisation of Reform as an English nationalist party.
Well, isn't it funny? We've literally just smashed it in Scotland and Wales, where we now have many more seats, many more elected representatives than the Labour Party, literally proving his nonsense as a bunch of twaddle. But then what do you expect from a Labour cabinet minister who's never had a proper job in the real world, running businesses, making money for shareholders and investors, knowing how to grow things?
Something else Wes Streeting said about your party was that Reform UK represent a threat to the values and ideals that have made this country great. Progressives across our country understand this threat and our responsibility to confront it. Are you a threat?
Poor little chap. I mean, he's so desperate. He cannot accept that his party has been utterly rejected by the voters just literally a week ago. And we actually represent everything that is great about this country: work, taking risks, entrepreneurships, family, community, country, and bringing people together under the umbrella of British values, British decency, the great Christian Judeo foundations of our nation. That's what we're about, and it seems that large parts of the whole United Kingdom agree with us. And I think just yesterday we had our biggest ever lead in a YouGov poll of 11%.
Now, this putative leadership contest, though it hasn't yet started, I think we can basically call it one. This potential leadership contest has been great fun for journalists and politicians, but for the country, it's meant our debt has become more expensive. The cost of servicing our debt has shot up over the course of the last 4 days. This is real money that is hitting the Treasury, that is hitting the taxpayer. When you were campaigning in the local elections, you said, vote Reform, get Starmer out. Does Reform bear some of the responsibility for the chaos?
The opposite. Actually, voters have said, yes, we want Starmer out, and we know that there's going to be a bit of short-term lack of governing, but all of those issues around the bond markets and the cost of government debt, what they call the UK moron premium, is because of the failures of the Chancellor and the Prime Minister and this Cabinet over the last 22 months. As I said in the chamber yesterday, I said that they have been a failure, they've been incompetent, and they've been negligent, typified in that King's speech when Ed Miliband wants to literally make it illegal to grant new licences to drill baby drill, which is what made us wealthy in the 80s and 90s, and is the reason why the American economy is growing at 3% a year, and why their gas price is about a third or a quarter of ours. You cannot be a rich nation unless you've got plentiful, cheap energy. We know how to make a profit. We know how to get this country more prosperous again so that people have got more money in their pocket at the end of the week. We know what will drive bills down. This Labour government has not got a Scooby clue.
Now, we've been speaking a lot about the troubles with the Labour leadership. I've got to ask you about the investigation that is now ongoing from the parliamentary authorities into your leader, Nigel Farage, over a £5 million gift that was not declared, that was not in the public domain. This is a concerning investigation, is it not?
Not at all, because we're absolutely clear. We've read the rules very clearly. Nigel's taken clear, robust advice. This was a personal gift. He wasn't in politics at the time. It was not related to any political activity, and therefore it was not declared. But look, they can investigate all they like. They love investigating, all of us. You know, I've had a sort of debenture slot on the front page of the Sunday Times, weeks after weeks. And do you know what? The voters have read all this stuff and say, we want successful people who know how to get things done, who know how to run businesses, to run our councils. They want more reform, not less reform. And when a general election comes around, they want us to run the country, to stop the P&L and the balance sheet going down the Swanee, and to grow again.
When this gift of £5 million was revealed, Nigel Farage said it was for security. Has all the money been spent on security for Nigel Farage?
The reality is, sadly, because of the risks to Nigel, £5 million probably won't be enough because the state won't pay. But look, it's a sizable sum of money. Nigel's security detail is very significant. We obviously don't go into details. I've spent a decade working closely with Nigel. I know how much security is required at different...
But did all of the money go on security?
It's a lifetime gift in order to ensure for his lifetime that he doesn't have to worry about safety and security. In the nicest possible way, this idea that all of a sudden you're going to show receipts. Do you want receipts for my socks, Tom, that I was given at Christmas? I mean, honestly, this stuff's ridiculous. Just let us get on with running our councils well. Let us get on with the right policies that we build up to draft legislation so that when a general election comes, we win a big majority so that we can save our nation.
Richard Tice, thank you very much. Well, it's all happening here on College Green outside of Parliament. We're going to be having a lot more politicians throughout the day responding to the extraordinary news of that resignation from the Cabinet and that potential leadership contest. For now, back to you.
Thank you very much. Tom Harwood there speaking with Richard Tice on College Green in Westminster. And let's go and speak now with former Labour MP Khalid Mahmood, who represented a seat in Birmingham. Khalid, thank you very much for joining us on GB News this afternoon. We've heard from Graham Stringer, a serving Labour MP, saying that he now wants Keir Starmer to go. Do you share his message?
I think, look, I think the electorate spoke during the local elections. It was clear that we did very badly. Over 1,500 seats of councillors who represented the Labour Party for a long time, who work hard day in, day out, have lost their seats. And in this system that we have, we take accountability for the work we do and the decisions that we take. And when they go wrong, we take responsibility for that. And that is what Keir should have done. And now this protracted issue around trying to get the leadership campaign, I think also Wes Streeting now needs to swiftly launch his campaign. He's resigned. And I think there should be no hanging about, and we should get on with it and let the people, at the end of the day, have a new leadership and decide what's going to happen.
Who should be that new leadership?
Oh, frankly, I think, you know, Andy is a friend of mine. We went into Parliament together, but we can't wait and hang around. It's got to be done. It's got to be done for the nation's sake, quickly as possible, because the bond markets, as you've known and you've seen, are punishing us. The markets on our companies and trade is punishing us, and we can't carry on waiting. We've got to get this thing done and over with and see how the new person that gets elected is perceived by the markets and by the country.
But Kelly, that's not a name. That's the big problem, isn't it?
I have no name. Frankly, I have no name. Wes Streeting is intimating that he wants to put his name forward. There could be Ed Miliband involved, and lots of other people that are involved. And frankly, I think the Labour Party has got itself in such a mess that I am not very happy with any of them. Moving forward, because they really have let the country down. We've had a huge majority, and still almost 2 years into a term, we're just in this stage, and I think it's a plague on all of their houses, frankly.
Khalid, is it a Labour Party problem or is it a Keir Starmer problem?
Well, it's both. And I think predominantly it's a Labour Party problem because we've allowed this sort of thing started off with the special advisors that's been sacked. And really, frankly, it's his monopoly on the Labour Party that has affected us. And I think, we need to move forward away from this and get back into a structure that actually deals with the issues of the party, deals with the working class people, deals with the cost of living crisis, and deals with the energy crisis that we have. And this is just a complete distraction.
Okay.
The Labour Party hasn't met those issues, and we need to move forward.
But Khalid, the problem with moving forward or not meeting those issues, the people who are being proposed as possible challengers to the Prime Minister, and of course they're not formally out doing that just yet, they all have a vision that would be in some way to the left of Sir Keir Starmer, perhaps not including Wes Streeting, but he hasn't even said if he's going to launch a challenge yet. That will draw the party very suddenly into general election territory.
Well, so be it. And I think at the end of the day, if he ends up in a general election, it'll give people another choice because this party, these people have let the country down. And I think what we're going to do now is move forward and deliver what the people need. And if that means another general election, let's go with it. 2 years into a government with a huge majority that we find ourselves in this position is basically a failure for the nation. And what we want to do is make sure that we progress. We have really no defense to talk of. We couldn't engage in what's going on in terms of trying to protect the Straits of Hormuz. We couldn't do anything internationally. We can't protect our data cables at the bottom of the sea, let alone anything else. So how are we going to move forward when we haven't got any of those issues to deal with?
Khalid, thank you so much. That's former Labour MP Khalid Mahmood there. I mean, the problem we've got now, Charlie, is we haven't actually got a health secretary when the NHS is on its knees still.
Yeah, we're waiting to hear from the Prime Minister, waiting to hear from the government, their reaction to that resignation. We're waiting to hear who will be the next Health Secretary. But we have heard from the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch. She has reacted to Wes Streeting's resignation.
I told Wes Streeting to do his job. Instead, he's done a hit job on the Prime Minister. The Labour Party has now descended into civil war. And here's the thing. While they're sharpening their knives and plotting in the bars of Westminster, nobody is running the country. So my team in Parliament is setting out what a serious government should actually do. This week, we're putting votes to Labour that'll stop the welfare spiral, properly secure and control our borders, boost the size of our army, and get serious on defence. And on energy, we lower bills by £200, cutting the green taxes that are killing British industry. The problem is not just Keir Starmer, it's Labour. And it doesn't matter which Labour MP is in charge, they're all queuing up to make things worse. Labour can't even agree on who leads their party. They have a vacancy, we have a plan to get Britain working again.
OK, that was Kemi Badenoch's reaction to Wes Streeting's resignation letter and challenge, well, not a challenge yet, but potential challenge to the Prime Minister. It's still very unclear as to who is challenging, if any of them are. So let's see if we can get any further on what's happening by talking to Catherine Forster. Catherine, have we heard anything from number 10 yet at all?
No, we really haven't. I hope you can hear me because there is a helicopter hovering overhead. It's pretty noisy here, but silence at the moment from Downing Street. I was talking to somebody a few hours ago, it feels like about a week ago now, who was saying this morning that they really didn't believe that Wes Streeting had the numbers, had those 81 names, and crucially, even though the Health Secretary has resigned and he's been removed from the government website as Health Secretary, we still don't know whether Wes Streeting has those 81 numbers because he's resigned, but he hasn't launched a leadership challenge. Now, we're being told that he hasn't done it because it would mean a whole load more ministers would have to go, and that would sort of disembowel the government and make it difficult for stuff to get done. Also, that he wants a competition of all the best talent, leaving the door open to Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, who doesn't have a seat in Parliament and is still looking for a seat or an MP to stand down for a by-election, and that the Health Secretary realised that without Andy Burnham in the mix, it was all going to be incredibly difficult. But the fact is that now where we are is there is currently no leadership challenge. So a whole load of other ministers might resign, or they might not. The Prime Minister might resign, although I really think that's very unlikely at this point from everything I've heard from people in Number 10. Or basically, nothing might happen now. The PM might not resign. Wes Streeting might not trigger the challenge. Angela Rayner might not trigger the challenge because she said that she won't go first. Andy Burnham doesn't have a seat. So there is a real possibility that this sort of chaos just goes on. And something which I find incredibly bizarre is Catherine West. You might remember her name from the weekend. I think probably most people had never heard of her. She was a backbench MP, and at the weekend she decided to say the Cabinet need to tell the PM to go, and if they don't do it, I am going to mount a challenge. She's actually been on the radio this afternoon, and she's been saying that the Prime Minister might win a leadership challenge, and she's actually not ruled out voting for the Prime Minister in a leadership challenge. You really, really could not make this stuff up. But I just find the whole situation so surreal. I feel like we have fallen through the looking glass at this point, because this was a government elected on a promise to stop the chaos, to not have infighting, to not be changing leaders like the Tories did. But it does feel at the moment like we could be heading for a sixth Prime Minister in just 7 years.
Catherine Forster, thank you so much. We'll be going back to Catherine if we have any more news. Indeed, if we do hear from that Prime Minister. Let's speak to former Labour speechwriter Simon Lancaster now. Simon, if you were writing a speech for Keir Starmer this afternoon, what would you be writing?
Wow. Well, that's the question, isn't it? I believe that every speaker must give the audience what they want. And I think the audience at the moment are clamouring for him to just move on and step down, isn't it? So surely that would be the starting point. And there, actually, if I was tasked with writing his resignation speech, it would be quite easy, because there's a little formula to these. You track back through prime ministerial resignation speeches through the years. They all follow the same kind of framework, where you start off like acknowledging reality. So, you know, I can see the public have spoken, my party has spoken, Parliament has spoken, whichever it happens to be. And then you take responsibility for that. You outline your legacy, your key achievements, which I'm not sure there'd be too much for Keir Starmer to point to, apart from maybe winning an election. And then you look to the future, some kind of metaphor, and you end with something personal, a nice little personal touch. You remember the beautiful thing when Gordon Brown resigned, and he said about how he was giving up the second most important job in the world to spend more time on the first, which was being a husband and a father. And I think that was the one time that Gordon Brown actually said something moving in one of his speeches.
Simon, you're a professional political communicator. Yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer told the nation that he had full confidence in Wes Streeting, and a little over 24 hours later, he's gone as Health Secretary. The Prime Minister's words will always receive a great amount of scrutiny, but I suppose we're entering the territory now where he'll start to look like his backers are against the wall for him and his team, and they'll just be saying whatever they can to rally the troops and prevent further resignations.
Yeah, absolutely. He's now in that awful kind of limbo period, isn't he? That no man's land where it seems quite clear that he's, he's going to struggle to govern. Anything he says now, he's going to struggle to take seriously. And I dare say now, and I mean, this is the way that Starmer pitched it yesterday when he said the formal process has not been triggered. He kind of clearly knocked the ball into the court of his would-be contenders. And now the burden is upon Streeting, Rayner, everyone who wants Starmer out to now get together and start the official challenge process. And I mean, surely that is now a matter of time, just when they get the numbers.
Simon, and just quickly and finally, Wes Streeting's resignation letter was really implying that Reform and Nigel Farage are ruining this country, too right-wing, implying there is racism there. My mum always said, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Do you think that was a mistake to include that in his letter?
No, I think he needed to do that. I think that's kind of him setting out his stall for how he will challenge as leader. The thing that I loved about the letter, though, was it did that beautiful bit there about you have many great strengths. You led our party to victory, and I was proud to fight alongside you. And you're waiting for the buts, aren't you? And there we go. That's the beauty. I love that. As the song says, I like big butts, and there was a very big butt there in that letter from Wes, where we had that wonderful, instead of vision, we've had vacuum, instead of direction, we've had drift. So that's when he really got the knife in.
All right, Simon Lancaster, former Labour speechwriter, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you. OK, and let's go now to Labour Party member Andy Williams. Andy, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, you're one of those people that could be voting. Where would your vote go?
Well, that's a very good question. It depends who's running. I mean, on Wes Streeting specifically, what's not clear yet is what he would do substantively differently from the government that Keir Starmer's been leading. Now, obviously, he hasn't joined. There isn't a leadership contest yet, so he hasn't been asked to set out what he'd do. But we need more than just a change of face and a change of voice. I think that will help, because clearly Keir Starmer, deeply, deeply unpopular, to say the least, can't carry a message to save his life, and has no real vision, which I think is what Wes Streeting's called out in that resignation letter that we were just discussing. Where we need vision, we have a vacuum. I think that's absolutely right. But it's not clear what Wes Streeting's alternative vision is. So the onus will be on him to set that out. I suppose where I am as somebody who's, on the centre left, on the right of the Labour Party, is, do I want to see Angela Rayner in Downing Street? Absolutely not. Do I want to see Ed Miliband in Downing Street? No. Andy Burnham, I think, is an empty vessel, to be completely frank, and I'm astonished that so many people think he's this great, leader of the nation in waiting. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not wildly enthused by the choices we have on the table here.
Had you down as a very sensible Labour Party supporter. I think you've just set out perfectly there the struggle for the party. Most of the visions competing with Sir Keir Starmer are to the left of the Prime Minister, and there is no mandate for that vision. It was not welcomed at the 2024 general election, and we could see a Labour Party debate also in a leadership contest that goes more to the left as well. We just heard from Simon, our guest before, speechwriter, saying that he thought it was great that Wes Streeting had addressed Reform UK as, English nationalist and talking about tackling racism. That's a risk, don't you think, Andy, to the Labour Party, if they go down that route in a big leadership election, that they'll be achieving big squabbles internally while the rest of the floating voters and those they've lost to Reform switch off?
Well, I'd say two things to that. Firstly, obviously, Wes Streeting and any leadership candidate, their audience right now, it has to be the Labour Party. And as you rightly said, the Labour Party is substantially to the left of the Labour Party membership is substantially to the left of the country. So Wes is acutely aware that he's likely to be the most right-wing candidate on the ticket, and he needs to appeal to those people. It's actually exactly what Keir Starmer did very effectively. Starmer basically pretended to be more left-wing than he was when he ran for the leadership, and then tacked to the right as soon as he was in post. But of course, it's a real challenge because you have Reform on the one hand, and many people voting for them, as we saw last week. But don't forget the Green Party as well. You know, Labour is bleeding votes to the Greens. I live in Lewisham in southeast London, where the Greens won the mayoralty, they won the council. You know, that's a huge shift to have a Green Party that is no longer an environmentalist party, but actually a populist left party. My view, obviously, I mean, I agree with you, Charlie. There was no mandate for a sort of hard left-wing government. That's not what people voted for in 2024. And it's actually not what anybody has ever voted for in this country. The reason Jeremy Corbyn couldn't win a general election, 2 successive general elections he lost, is because that is not where the country is. We need to be in the mainstream of British politics, which is in the centre, but with a bold and ambitious agenda to actually fix the problems we have. And if you bring in a Miliband or a Rayner, are they really going to seriously tackle problems like our burgeoning welfare bill? Are they really going to tackle illegal immigration? Absolutely not. They're very comfortable with these things, and actually they would expand our welfare state, and that is not what we need. So on every score, I think what I'm very clear about, whether it's Wes Streeting or not, is that it has to be somebody who is from the sensible mainstream of British politics and not from the reactionary left.
OK, Andy, just one final quick question for you. This has never happened in the history of the Labour Party. Do you think it's fatally wounded the party?
I'd be reluctant to write off the party for good. You know, one thing we need to remember is there's 3 years to go. That might depress some of your viewers, but there's 3 years to go until a general election as it stands. And that's a very, very long time in politics. People were writing off the Tories, you know, when Theresa May resigned and Boris Johnson came along and won a stonking majority and secured another 5 years for the Conservative government. So it's entirely possible that if Labour get this right, if they choose somebody who can reconnect with the country and who can actually deliver, I think there is a path back. Because remember, while Reform had a very good night the other night, and while the Greens are on the march, you know, there's no great love for either of those parties. Nigel Farage has a net approval rating of -38. He is not popular generally in the country, while I accept he is popular with some people. There is a path for Labour to come back, but they need to get this right in the next few months.
Andy, I think we've got the first reaction from a government minister since Wes Streeting's resignation from government. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has told reporters that his resignation is an opportunity for Labour to draw a line under all of this. I mean, what do you make of that assessment? Is this now such an opportunity to draw a line under this psychodrama, as it's being termed? It's an opportunity that could, of course, not be taken, and it could descend into even more infighting.
Well, one thing that's clear is that the status quo is not sustainable. Now, in the next few hours or days, Keir Starmer's going to have to find a new health secretary. He might have to find more new cabinet ministers if there are further resignations. There is no way, I don't think, that it's feasible for Starmer to carry on. At the very least, there would have to be a leadership contest that he ran in and won. Now, I don't think that's impossible, but it seems pretty unlikely. The point is, we can't have this continued drift and, as you put it, psychodrama, which allows Starmer to just cling on in Downing Street with wave after wave of resignation. So something's got to give. Streeting's gone over the top. Angela Rayner has deliberately timed her announcement about her settling her HMRC bill to put her hat into the ring. Let's see what happens with Andy Burnham, who somehow feels he's entitled to just have a seat in Westminster. I think the arrogance is breathtaking there. But let's see.
Andy, thank you very much for your analysis this afternoon on what has been a momentous afternoon in British politics, and it could be the dying days of Sir Keir Starmer's premiership, because Wes Streeting has resigned as Health Secretary, setting off what is likely to be a leadership contest for the leadership of the Labour Party and, by extension, the country. Although we don't know that for sure yet, we could still be here tomorrow, but that is all from us today. Thank you so much for your company throughout the show, but please don't go anywhere, because Martin Daubney will take you through
until 6 o'clock on this momentous day for British politics. Thank you for your company.
All the developments here on GB News. Stay with us. Martin Daubney up next.
Are you dreaming of a ton of tax-free cash this summer? We want to make that dream come true with a stunning £76,543 and 21 pence in cash to spend however you like. Put a new car on the drive or just relax in the knowledge that this year we've got your back. For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick